As you guys know, we hop on these calls to elevate, each other, to grow consciously, to grow mentally, to grow spiritually. If you guys are new to the call, make sure you guys definitely grab a pen and paper to take some type of notes because 9 times out of 10, on these type of seminars, there's going to be something that you might hear that you may not have heard before, you may not know. And it's very important for you to be able to take this information back with you so that you can apply the things that you hear today. Because knowledge not applied is no knowledge at all. And ultimately, we want everybody to be able to gain from these seminars and be able to teach it to somebody else. Honestly, each one teach one because we're all here to elevate each other. And if we're not here elevating ourselves, then ultimately we're doing a disservice to the planet. So with that being said, I don't want to take up too much time for the wonderful lady speakers today. You guys know them already, and if you don't, Nicolette, someone who's been on the call for the last multiple weeks, been able to provide value on just teaching unity consciousness, helping us to really understand that we're really no different than each other on a large scale, and everything just ultimately leads back to the same thing when you really figure out the root of things. On top of that, as well, Tiffany on the call, who's been able to articulate herself well to explain just different aspects of the chakra systems and really understanding them to where you can apply them into your own lives. So that way, you guys can really go ahead and take this stuff and see how you can apply it to your everyday life. You feel what I'm saying? Because once you understand the information, you start to enter the everyday life. You start to see how the information really applies to yourself. And finally, Sage on the call. I believe she's on the call. Who has also been able to give a lot of value as far as just perspective. I get a lot of perspective from Sage, and just her viewpoints, and even the enlightening questions that she asks. Hopefully, she asks a few today. But her questions make you think and really come up with different answers to expand on the thought as well. So, with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and pass over the call so they can go ahead and get things started. I believe you guys can unmute yourselves. I think Nicolette is going first, or Tiffany, you're going first.
Hey y'all. So as he said, my name is Tiffany, and I want to talk to y'all about the solar plexus today. That's something that me and the girls, we've all been in alignment with, working with the energy of our solar plexus. But before we actually get into that, I do want to say right now, with the moon being in its waning crescent, this is a good time for us to just declutter our area, our spaces, and create space for new energy because we are entering a new moon soon. So it's a new moon in Cancer, I believe. So basically just like anything like releasing, banishment, refinement. So I've been in a state of refinement for a while, just letting go of old clothes that don't align with my character anymore, or any items within the house, the whole household, like it gotta go. Even within my phone, deleting old messages, pictures, anything that's just not in alignment with where I want to be, where I see myself. I've been releasing that. So if anyone hears this and feels, called to or aligned with this message, I would definitely recommend that. And really like take this time to prepare to slow down, relax, rest, because we are going in a new moon. But just starting, like switching over to the solar plexus. So the solar plexus is our third chakra, and it's all about our willpower, personal power, our ability to bring our thoughts into manifestation, to crystallize our thoughts. I'm actually holding a crystal, a citrine right now. What else? It deals with our self-esteem and our self-confidence. So our self-esteem is the worth that we give to ourselves. So the more that we value ourselves, the more we build on our self-esteem. So what are some ways that we can value ourselves? Something simple to even do is just name out all of your positive qualities. Like think about what you have to offer when you're with friends, family, or just with yourself, like to the world. What do you feel like you have to offer to the world? And I think it's important to really speak on this type of stuff because let's say within the spiritual community, or like when we talk about like these conscious conversations, sometimes I feel like it can get a little bit like down, like we're speaking on like our shadow or things we need to work on. But like I think it's also important to speak on things that is uplifting to us and see the light within us, soul, the sun, solar plexus energy. So I'm actually get everyone to participate, because participation is also solar plexus energy, on like three things that they think is a strength within themselves. And I'm gonna start first, but just continuing on the solar plexus. So self-confidence, our ability to do things successfully. So as we build more skills, we strengthen our confidence. And something that really helps with me is words of affirmation. I don't know if everyone's like that, but let's say now that I've been giving myself that words of affirmation, because it used to be my second love language, I don't feel that need to get it from other people. Like I don't need that validation from other people. Like I know I'm good. Like I have it written out on the wall. I have it written out everywhere. I'm really heavy on words of affirmation. And I think it can really benefit whoever, whether it's staring at yourself in the mirror and saying these affirmations, writing them down, just speaking it if you want. Like it really does make a difference. Cause I remember 2 years ago when I first started getting into like my spirituality and all, one of the first things I started to do was words of affirmations. And I used to look at myself and tell myself I was beautiful. And it used to be cringe, couldn't even front. It was cringe. I didn't believe myself, none of that. But I'm gonna say within a month, it really changed like my perspective on myself, how I view myself. Since then, I haven't called myself ugly within the past 2 years. Like even if there's days where I don't feel that confident, like I won't say it. For me, like I really believe in words of affirmations. I'm real heavy on that. But right now, I'm about to speak on some of my strengths, 3 of my strengths, and then I would like for the rest of y'all to participate. Think of 3 strengths that you have. So right now, my first is my ability to come up with ideas. Think I'm like real good with that. I love coming up with new ideas. My second strength is I'm a great organizer. I love to be organized. It helps with my sanity, my peace of mind. I like to do it for myself or whoever. Like I just like to organize. I organize my notes, organize my room, organize everything within my life. And then my third is I know how to relate and communicate with others. So like I can meet you today and I could carry on a conversation with you for 4 hours. Like I've known you for like a long time. That's the type of person I am, especially because I used to be a lash type. So like I was always around new girls. I could read people, like read their energy to see if they do want to talk, but I always knew how to keep a conversation going. So I'm gonna pass it over to either Nico or CJ first to speak on their 3 strengths.
Nico, I'll let you go first.
Okay, cool. Peace. So for my 3 strengths, I feel like they're open-mindedness, like my ability to always want to learn something, and creativity, always trying something new, trying a different way to like make something like unique in my way. And I would say positivity as well as being another strength for me, because I feel like even though like life has thrown many obstacles at me, I've always kept that type of like, you know what, like it is what it is, but like I'm gonna be better the next day. Like I'm always get back. And so yeah, I think those are my 3 strengths.
Bet. So I would say I have more than 3 strengths. But I'll go with, my favorite three, maybe I should say. Number one, I'd say my leadership skills, leadership ability. I can see myself. I look at my life in many scenarios where I've always had different scenarios to where, like, if I was in a group setting or environment to where multiple people, I would choose to be the leader unless I truly felt like the person I was leading, I was comfortable under their leadership. But 9 times out of 10, when I don't, I'm gonna just go ahead and take the role and just lead because I know I can lead myself, and if I can lead myself, I can lead others. Number two, I would say is my relentless nature. So for me, I literally have a story to bring with it. The other day, I went to the mailbox and my mailbox is janky for some reason. Like, I don't know why, but it's janky. Like, the keys don't even work. So I don't even remember which key it was, but I'm cycling through the keys over and over and over and over and over. And then I go to my Dukes. I'm like, yo, which key is it? And she don't even know. Right. So I then go back outside. I'm like, nah, I'm getting what I need to get out of this mailbox. Like, I'm not, you know what I'm saying? I'm not about to go inside. So it's hot. I'm figuring out these keys. And then next thing you know, I'm damn near about to break the whole mailbox. And then finally it goes in. But like, it made me sit there and just be like, yo, like, I'm relentless. Like, I'm not about to just, sometimes certain things, like, I just put matters into my own hands to get it done. So if I get knocked down or something, but I still really want to go back and get up, I'm gonna really get up. So that's the strength of mine. And the third thing I would say is just my, my art, the way I articulate myself. I think that's a strength of mine, just the way I'm able to speak and take my thoughts and express it in words. I think that's a big strength of mine. So Um, I'm gonna choose. I'm gonna choose Kaylee to go next, and then Kaylee pass it on to someone else.
All right, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah,
So I would say my first one is keeping your peace in tune with your beliefs. So basically, how can I put this? So basically, let me see. And then being and believing and feeling, but being with believing and feeling instead of physicality, instead of physical touch, instead of physical feeling, you know? So that's basically like IB affirmations because you're being instead of feeling, or you're not amming, right? Like AM, you know? Because fuck the mornings, right? Anyways, um,
nah, facts. We feel you. Give us two more.
okay. um, Looking at everything as a beautiful thing. Doesn't matter what it is. Nature, your hair, your clothes, your physical touch, your physical body. What else? Liquid, solid, gas, whatever, you know, like the atom and the what? What else? Science, whatever. And what else? Let me see here. Yeah, I be taking notes. I don't know about you.
That you said. So you said the second was just seeing the beauty and everything, and the third was is just science.
Mm-hmm.
That we appreciate it. We appreciate the participation. Call on someone else on the call that you don't even know.
Okay. Aaliyah. Trust.
Hi. Yes. You said what's my three favorite Netflix series I have?
Your three, just three of your best strengths, maybe three of your favorite strengths that you have about yourself.
All right. I'd say my three strengths. Well, my first one, I'd say creativity. Like, I think I have really good creativity, and I could usually when there's like a problem, I could always think of some way to get out of it, or um, just like I'm already a creative person. Like, I already have a lot of artistic ability in my life. Because of that, I feel like I'm able to see myself out of certain situations and problems better. The second, I think my second strength I have would be like my adaptability. The more I've learned about 2 years of, I don't know, like my personal development, I'd say I've like been able to adapt to certain things and just accept, like, you got to unlearn old habits and everything. I think I'm able to change certain things and make it better. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I don't know what I'm saying. But, my third, I could see past certain, like, I could see past certain situations and the positive. I think that would be my other experience. But there'd be like a lot of problems, and I could see on how to navigate through it. And maybe I see the positive through it. That's because then I need to the next one. I think creativity, adaptability, and looking past situations.
Bet. We appreciate it, Leah. We didn't hear. I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna speak for everybody. We did not hear everything you just said, but I'm still appreciative that you shared it and you got it out. I think you might be on the move or something, but it was like cutting in and out. But it's all good. We still appreciate you for sharing your thoughts and everything. I'll go to the person right next to her for the next one. So my guy Derek, go ahead and share your three strengths.
Bet that. So I would say the number one, I'm not even gonna rank them. These are just my strengths, right? One, of course, my ability to speak and explain. That's definitely one of my strengths. Two, my ability to heal people and uplift people's mood. And then the third one, so I came to this conclusion with when I was on the phone with Joe like a month ago, right? I was basically explaining astrology to him, and I told him how I learned it, right? I just watched this man's videos on YouTube, literally watched a couple breakdowns of zodiac signs, et cetera, and then my mind did the rest. And I was like, all I needed was the foundation, and then my mind does the rest on auto construction. So I think that's my next strength, auto constructively thinking. It's a term I came up with, auto construction. And rewatching I talk about movies all the time, rewatching the Iron Man series and the Avengers, how Tony Stark's mind works. I was watching the movies dead ass thinking like, bro, the way this nigga just picks up information and then it seems so natural to him and he's just so in tune, so in flow. He gets the information and he can instantly create with it. That's how I feel. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's my third strength, is just my ability to understand information. All I need is the foundation of knowledge, and then what I can build with that, simply just off of the foundation of it. Give me the foundation and I can build a skyscraper. Those are my three biggest strengths. My ability to heal people, my ability to speak and explain, and my ability to create with my mind.
Appreciate it, bro. And if you can.
Hello, wait. Yeah, I was gonna say I got who's going next. Danae, unmute. Show yourself.
I gotta
If you
show
don't know what
myself.
we're doing, yeah, you gotta show yourself too. We like real participation. If you don't know what we're doing, we showing our three biggest strengths.
Okay. Okay. Hey, I'm very much cleaning, but I would say my three biggest strengths are I'm very passionate. Anything that I set my mind to, or anything that I feel called to, I go for it full force, and I'm not really deterred very easily from the things that I'm passionate about. Another strength, I can heal people as well. I've always been, a lot of people would describe me as a motherly figure in my friendships, where I would constantly give advice, especially advice that I need to take myself. I'm very good at reading people too. So whenever me and Derek first met, the first conversation we ever had, I was basically like reading his situation, and it was kind of crazy. And I would say my third strength, I'm very compassionate. Like, it's very hard for me to see the complete bad in somebody. Like, I can't demonize somebody completely without seeing the good. I'm very good at seeing the good in people. I don't like speaking. Oh my God.
There's a saying that sometimes you got to do the things you don't like to grow in life.
And you did great.
And you did your thing, for real.
Thank you.
If you can, call on one person that you see that you personally don't know. We'll let you know if they win or not. Don't worry.
Elise, did she go? I'm so sorry.
Hello. So my three strengths are my intuition, because I just have a way of knowing things even without knowing why I know them. I just feel it and I'm always right. So I love that for me. My carefree personality, because I always am lighthearted every time I go anywhere. I always make people smile. I always make people happy. Like, just something about me. And then my heart, because I always can forgive someone easily and give off as much love to anyone as much as possible. And That's my 3 strengths. So, can I pick somebody else?
Yeah, we appreciate it. We appreciate you sharing.
Thank you. How about Andre? Did they go? No? Okay.
I bet y'all can hear me. Make sure that
Yeah,
I'm
Yeah.
all right, bet. So I'm not really one to talk about strengths too much, but if I had to go and identify 3 things about myself that I do well, I would say being a leader is really a big quality. I feel like a lot of people just naturally kind of gravitate towards me and they ask me for advice, stuff along those lines. Another thing that I could say about myself, I'm very good at formulating plans. So when it comes to getting something done, when it comes to coming up with some type of business model, stuff along those lines, that's something that I do well as well. And then to the next side to it, I could say reading people's energy, really figuring out where they have their childhood trauma, where that's rooted at, just by looking at them and having a conversation. I'm pretty good at pinpointing certain things, in regards to whether or not like they might have some trauma with one of their parents, stuff along those lines. So I would say those are 3 strengths for sure.
Appreciate it. And definitely call on one person that didn't go.
Let me see. Did Nelda go?
I didn't. So my 3 big strengths I would say is that I'm observant. I feel like this helped me learn my discernment. Like it helped me acknowledge things in others and what's around me. 2, I would say I'm compassionate. And my last one would be I am very creative. I like using my creativity in everything that I do. So, yeah.
Appreciate it. And just call on one person that has not gone yet. I think the only options is Ari, Nicolette, and Kasi.
Kasi.
Hello?
Hi, we can hear you.
Okay. I'm sorry. My hair is I'm okay. I'm be real with y'all. My hair is not done, so I kind of don't want to show. I don't want to show my face right now.
My hair is not done. There's no judgment zone here.
Oh, okay, fine. I'm gonna do it anyway. Ooh, listen, I'm gonna put a weakness out there. My looks. That's for right now. One of my 3 strengths is my ability to understand diversity and add to others. Also my ability to want to learn and absorb and basically intake enlightenment and share with others. And I wrote these down, by the way. I had to. I was listening to everybody. My ability to listen and adapt to energy and help others shift. That's another. So those are my 3. So yeah, that's about it. I don't know. Let's see.
Yeah, appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, I'm gonna have Nicolette. Oh no, I'm sorry. Ari and then Nicolette, and then C.
Hello.
Yeah, we can.
I first want to say that was a really strong 3. But for my first one, I would say adaptability.
Thank you.
You're welcome. For my first one, I would say adaptability, and I can pretty much adapt to any situation. I don't feel like I've ever been in a scenario where I couldn't figure it out. I kind of just like step back for a second, look at it, and then it just comes to me as if I've already done it before. My second one I would say is integrity. And then my third one I would say is compassion as well. I have love for everyone. Like, as somebody else said, it doesn't matter like what your situation or what you've done. I somehow still have love for you. So you want to go too?
Oh yeah. So I'm with Ari, so I'm gonna just go ahead and go too. But I would say my 3 strengths, and I'm gonna just throw this in just like CJ did. I have plenty more than 3, so it's kind of hard just to boil it down to just 3 ones. But I would say my number 1 strength, in my opinion, would be comprehension, because I can learn things very quickly. I can see what's going on, and I just I can comprehend things, just to put it simply. My second strength, I would say, is resilience, because I'm not even gonna say very hard. It's impossible to knock me down. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter what happens. You get up and you keep going, because I'm still alive. My heart's still beating. So in reality, I don't have an excuse. And I would say my third strength, it's kind of like more of like a 2-part strength, but I would just say like half leadership, but half inspiration. Because I've noticed throughout my life, I've inspired like a lot of people to better themselves. And so it kind of sucks sometimes because I'm low-key lazy, but like people always hold me to like a higher standard because I help them elevate themselves. And so it's like sometimes I'll be wanting to take a break and do things that I probably shouldn't, you know what I mean? And it's like the people that I'm around and that I'm surrounded myself with and helped uplift won't allow me to, because they see the potential in me. So yeah, and I'll say those.
Appreciate it. Let's see. I want to hear my guy Mike before Nicolette goes. Actually, he just joined. I know I just seen he was on the move, but my guy Mike, if you could hear me, we sharing our 3 strengths. You know what I'm saying? We sharing our 3 strengths. So share 3 strengths.
Yeah, you're gonna put me on the spot like that again?
Yeah, you was the last one.
Nah, I feel you. But I'm not even gonna lie. I'm gonna try to answer this as best as I can, because in this year alone, I feel like my strengths transition crazy. From last year to now, where I'm at right now. Just because of how much career path I've changed, how much things that I've been through. But I'm gonna say, I'm gonna come back and sign in. That's cool. I'm gonna come back and sign in. I got you. My fault, I'm at the gym, guys. I apologize. But I'm gonna say, I don't know. My first strength, I'm gonna say to uplift others for sure. Because one thing I'm gonna say is, if I'm in an environment, or if I'm doing something, or if I feel like others around me are not pushing to their full potential, you feel me, or going as 100 as they can, then that's something that I'll be on top of, because I want everybody to be at their best potential, their full potential at all times. Because 1, you never know what somebody else is going through, and 2, everybody need that push, even myself, So like I said, I love to do that, and I love to keep myself around those type of people. 2, very compassionate for sure. And 3, what can I say? Just I'm not gonna lie, I don't know the right word for this, but you could say like I just be on go. Like no matter adaptive. I don't know who said that earlier. I was hearing somebody, a great person, say that was one of their strengths, and I truly am agreeing with that for sure, for them and for myself for sure. And which is adapting to the environment. You feel me? Understanding the situation and just keep going and keeping my head strong, and just staying focused on the goal. That would be my 3.
Appreciate it, bro. Appreciate you. Lastly, Sage, you can go ahead.
Hello. So you guys have a lot of really awesome strengths. I would say my 3 strengths would be being optimistic. I've watched myself pull myself out of the craziest situations, and it was really just a mindset change, like just
to say like, okay, this is how I feel, and I cannot feel this way. So I feel like that's a huge strength that I try my best to project onto other people. My second one, I would say leadership. I always find myself being the first or being very like authentic and just like in just different groups or with just different friendship and different friendships. And then my third one, I would say being an empath, being able to read energy and to read just different emotions is a huge strength of mine. So. Oh, and then I guess I call on Nicolette.
Oh, she already went. But
Yeah.
thank you to everybody who participated. I'm glad y'all all participated and everyone showed their face. So that right there, even when they didn't want to, that right there is going against like your comfortability. So that's heavy on solar plexus energy. And it's important that we all like uplift ourselves and see the good within ourselves, because that helps with our self-confidence. I was reading this book and it was saying how like basically, did you know that people with higher self-confidence end up with higher levels of income, career satisfaction, and fewer health problems compared to their peers with low self-confidence? So I think this was very beautiful. I'm glad that everybody participated. I'm really, really, really glad that everybody did. And that's all I have for y'all today. And I'm gonna pass it over to Sage. Let's pass it back to Sage. And yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm on my laptop today and for some reason it doesn't let me like switch screens. So I'm gonna turn my camera off. Bear with me. Okay, let's see. Okay. So last week we kind of talked about just different attachment styles and kind of relating it to the sacral chakra. We talked about sexual exchange or whatnot. So this week we're talking about the solar plexus. Okay, so what I have for you guys, the solar plexus is the most powerful chakra in the body. It's the divine connection to the sun and source energy. And I like to personally say that the solar plexus is where we get our creativity from, and creativity comes from God. So I don't know if you guys know who Rashad Jamal is, but he says that the solar plexus is the house of the soul. And if a person has a blocked solar plexus, it's hard for them to manifest it with intent. He also says the solar plexus is the battery to the body. So if you think about it, during sex, you can literally deprive yourself and your body of source energy. I like to connect the sacral chakra, the sexual chakra, with the solar chakra, the energy chakra, because when we have sex and we regret it, the emotion of shame blocks our creativity. So how can you focus on your divine plan when your sacral chakra is out of balance because you're giving up your power during sexual activity? This is why sexual retention is so important through abstinence. Only then can you hear the divine and begin to create. All right, so let's see who I have for you guys. So this week, I want to tie it in to healing the sacral chakra through the solar plexus, or in other words, learning how to find passion again. If one pours creativity into true passion, the need for empty sexual activity will not exist. The solar plexus is the chakra of purpose. So what is it that feeds addiction related to drugs, toxic people, toxic environments? I would answer that and say lack of self-control, having a low self-esteem, and unhealthy coping skills. So the best way I scale my own nervous system when I'm feeling, when I feel my nervous system is imbalanced, I scale myself from either 1 to 5 or 5 to 10. 1 being very low and empty, 10 being very high and fulfilled, and 5 would be that neutral feeling. So learning to cope and remaining at a 5, I would say that's or excuse me, when we are conscious individuals, I would say it's our responsibility to learn to remain at a 5 and not seeking sex or substances like marijuana or smoking cigarettes outside of ourselves to chase that short-lived high. So usually when we feel when we're having sex or substance smoking or whatnot, you're experiencing a 10, and a lot of people experience that 10 throughout their day, throughout their week, and it becomes kind of normal to them. So when they feel the 5, they think that they're at a low or they think something must be wrong, but really they're just back to that neutral feeling. So learning to cope through our solar plexus is learning to just kind of feel normal at that 5. Okay, let's see here. If experiencing solar plexus symptoms like low self-esteem, codependency, addictive personality, difficult setting or keeping boundaries, some steps to healing or coping skills would be low dopamine activities. So when dealing with healing the solar plexus, first I would say to begin with grieving what happened and accepting that you do need coping skills. I think the first step to anything is truth and coming to truth with yourself. The second step here is accepting that it's a normal reaction and that you're allowed to be upset when your nervous system is in need of help. So I would say either verbally speak it to other people, speak out loud, record yourself, or learning to journal about it. So everybody is faced with 2 different options here, is to either live with a dysfunctional nervous system or to affirm to yourself, I deserve to have a regulated nervous system. So when you're learning for emotional coping skills, I would say sunlight would be the first one on the list. Learning to feed your solar plexus, not with just a middleman, but with direct sunlight if you can. 2 would be giving yourself a pep talk, high-fiving yourself in the mirror or kissing yourself in the mirror. It might seem kind of silly at first, but most days we don't even notice that we go without affection from other people or ourselves. So it is our job to boost our happiness. Third, I would say meditation. You can meditate through breath work. Breath work is for the body. Visualization is meditation for the mind. And mantras and affirmations is meditation for the soul. So meditation is a great coping skill. Number 4, I would say bathing yourself in a bath is a great exercise to learn how to ground and be with your emotions. I would say emotions because you're in the water and you're forced to sit in that bathtub until the water gets cold. So I think that's a really awesome way. You can cry it out in there. You can even journal in the bath or whatnot. So learning to just ground yourself and stay present. But if you're coping with problem solving coping skills, I would say learning how to time management, making time for you to rest and breathe throughout the day. You do not lack hours in the day, but you lack time management. Second, I would say exercise, moving stagnant energy and in the body is essential for mental health and physical growth. I put that one on the list because asking for help is so important, and moving your body, moving that stagnant energy from your body. And lastly, learning to set boundaries and creating lists of solutions. More times than not, we have a list of all the problems, all the things we don't like, but when working with the sacral chakra, it's kind of like forward movement and how can we turn those problems into solutions? And I would like to end saying, remember, happiness is your responsibility, setting boundaries and affirm, I am an indestructible powerhouse. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Wait, can I just say something? I really like what you said there, because it's funny how I was thinking about the solar plexus one of the days. I was gonna speak about it on my TikTok. And basically what you were saying, how like this is where people can chase a false high whether that's through orgasms, through sex, drinking, smoking, experiencing like those fake euphorias. You're using something outside of you to get that high. So like, I'm really glad that you spoke on coping skills or coping mechanisms that we can give to ourselves, feed ourselves, so we're not chasing for something outside of us.
Yes. Yeah, I think one of the biggest ways our community and the youth copes is through sexual experiences and maybe smoking weed, or we kind of went over this today, but I think sex is one of the biggest ways we run from our problems and run from ourselves. And it's so acceptable in our society. So if anybody has questions, feel free to ask.
So I'm just gonna go next. If you guys have questions, just type it in the chat, or if anything, say them at the end. But I have a PowerPoint I want to share with you guys. So basically, we're talking about the solar plexus today, and what does that really mean? So that really is talking about harnessing our power. So when we're harnessing our power, at the end of the day, we have to do devotion, daily practice. We have to really be disciplined with this. So working with that solar plexus energy, we have to practice learning how to harness that. So another way to do that is actually practicing yoga. So oftentimes when we see yoga, they're usually referring to hatha or asanas, which is a form of yoga. And that's just like the physical postures that we usually see people doing, like the sun salutations, for example, different stretches, different movements. And all of that is great, but that's only like a small part of yoga. And like yoga has been practiced through all ancient cultures. They have different names for it, but this is just the Hindu perspective. But basically, we are all always conscious. Like we always are aware of where we're at in that moment. And this is like really, when we really like reflect on this, we can understand like we all are choosing to be where we're at this present moment. So just keeping that in mind, like when we choose the path of growth, like doing the things that like ancient ancestors have taught us that have worked, like getting back in tune with that and actually practicing that will really show you like how energy really works. And just, it's just ancient knowledge that has always helped us in this growth process. So the first limb that is out of all the limbs is the yamas, and this is known as external disciplines. So the yamas right here are the 5 social ethics. So this is known as the ahimsa, which is also known as kindness. This is known as satya, which is truthfulness. This is known as asteya, which is non-stealing. And this is also known as brahmacharya, which is moderation, and aparigraha, which is generosity. So that's the first limb. The second limb is the niyama, which is internal disciplines. So internal disciplines include the 5 personal practices, which are satya, which is purity, santasha, which is contentment, tapas, which is austerity, swadhyaya, which is self-study or discipline, iswara, which is pranidhana, which is surrender. And those are the internal disciplines. So these 2 things I would like tie into like the 42 ideals of Ma'at. And like those are like the principles that we should be carrying throughout our day. And this is something to really reflect on in the rising, like when we first get up. Like it's really great to do, because when you start your day off with like, these are my affirmations, this is how I go about life, then your whole day is surrounded by that energy, which is what you started the day off focusing on. So next comes meditation, which is asana. So asanas is like when we do the sun salutations, for example, we can do a stagnant meditation or a moving meditation. So the moving meditations is about like getting that energy flow through all your chakras, whereas a sitting meditation is more about sitting still and, like we were talking about earlier, like releasing those needs for like dopamine and like allowing ourselves to actually feel and sit in the energy that we are at right now. And that's just another practice for like actually letting go of certain things that haven't been serving you. But another way to do that is also movement. So when we're working with these chakras, like the solar plexus, for example, doing different asanas, different like positions can quite literally release those energies and allow you to switch from the lower polarity, which is blocked, to the open polarity, which is now, like, for example, sovereignty, leadership, and confidence. So when you do things to fix your posture, for example, quite literally, your energy will radiate as confidence, because people with confidence energy, confidence auras, they usually have a good posture. So the next one is pranayama. So this is also another form of meditation where we focus on breath control. And this is something that's really important when it comes down to like accepting certain things. Like we have to actually practice how to allow that flow to come. And so breath work is actually a great way to practice that, because in the beginning can actually be challenging, like trying to breathe deeper and hold that breath. But the more you do it, the more that flow you get used to. And this is just something that is great to like do before you do like a meditation on shadow work. Just getting that breath work in is something that's really important. So I would suggest like looking up different Hindu perspectives of like how to do pranayama, because this is the Hindu perspective, but like watching things on YouTube, like seeing how they take one finger to breathe in one nostril and do the next nostril for a different purpose, because everything is done with intention. And the both sides like are activating different energies, because we have a kundalini energy which works with both masculine and feminine, and just being aware of why we're doing things with the pranayama. So next, well, let me go back down. So for pranayama is mindful breathing, which is honoring the breath and uncovering the light within. But next is pratyahara. So pratyahara is withdrawal of senses. So once again, this is more of like a still type of meditation. So you've done like your moving ones, which is the asanas. You've done your breath control, and now you're going into like the stillness of meditation, which is the pratyahara. So this is also practicing the law of detachment when you're in the state of pratyahara, because now you're sitting there and you're just opening yourself up to receive. And that's really what it is to practice the law of detachment. So pratyahara is turning inward, providing alternate inner point of attraction like breath and chakras to the senses to go inward. So next is dharana. So dharana is concentration. So whenever we put our focus, that's something that we want to manifest, that's going to like actually flourish and create into the actual physical world. It's going to manifest into the physical world. So when we focus on our concentration throughout the day of where our mind is drifting off to, for example, whether we have intrusive thoughts that are kicking in, and being aware of them and actually like saying like, wait, is this something that I align with? It's something that's really important to like keep in mind throughout your day, because at the end of the day, we're going through programming all the time, and like we can't really escape it if we're going to go out to the world. So it's just being aware of something that's really important of where your concentration is drifting off to. So this is also like deconcentration, which is dropping all the efforts and letting go. Like I said, detachment. So like allowing those things that do not serve you, or allowing your understanding like, okay, you put in enough work and now you're just ready to receive like the fruits of your labor, and allowing it to come to you. So next is dhyana. So meditative absorption is dhyana, and basically what that means is, oh, actually I said the wrong one. Focusing and attention is concentration, but dhyana is the opposite, which is dropping all of the efforts and letting go. So this is really what detachment is, but dharana is focusing on the problem that you need to like fix. So samadhi is union or integration, which is like working with your crown chakra. So when we think of our crown chakra, we often think of like enlightenment or unity consciousness, but what does that really mean? So samadhi is pure bliss, constant, complete harmony of self with universe. It's being in the state of understanding, being in the state of awareness of why you are at a certain position in life, where you are and where you want to go. So being able to understand who you are and then your connectedness to the universe, because at the end of the day, we come from source. So just being able to understand, like, you do work with these universal laws. You do have to be like conscientious of what you're manifesting relative to self, but everybody else, because you are connected to everybody and you do affect other people, whether you realize it or not. So this is really what it is to be in the state of samadhi, because now you're in that state of oneness and understanding. So human brainwaves are just like a part of something that I really want to talk about, because I've been bringing up a lot of like levels of consciousness prior to this, but like being able to understand what state you're in when you're doing it, I think is something that's really important. Because like when we're in the state of detachedness and like detached awareness and sleeping, for example, a lot of times people, like when they talk to me, they think sleeping is not like actual reality. They say like, oh, like this is just something that I was just dreaming, and this is just something that wasn't really like, it happened in my dream, but it didn't feel real. Like I this doesn't seem possible. Like I would never do this in real life. But when we actually reflect on what consciousness is, we understand that everything quite literally is reality. Like no matter how you shake the stick, consciousness is always being experienced, awake or sleep. So understanding that every single level of consciousness is reality. And at the same time, we can understand, like, even people in psychosis, for example, they're in a state of reality, but that's just their perceived reality of what they can receive, because that's just their choice of what they want to experience. So the lowest one is delta, which is sleeping. And this is also like when we're in that healing state. So our body is always like regenerating and processing everything that we went through like in the day. So this is why it's really important when you like have like a good start to your day, like being aware of how like every single thought and action throughout that day quite literally affects even your sleeping patterns, and how your body heals and how your subconscious reflects that into your reality. So next is the theta. So that's like the second fastest, and that's like the meditation and intuition and memory. So when we are in the theta state, we're usually getting that gut feeling, for example. We're getting those memory flashbacks when you're doing shadow work. And that's just like, I would explain it as like when we're in the flow state, but coming from that feeling aspect. So when we're in alpha, like the alpha state, relaxation and visualization and creativity is just some of the things that we experience. So like this is being able to use that solar plexus energy, for example, having that visualization and being able to create it into your reality and being relaxed. Because another thing too, like when we're working with our solar plexus, like there's a different energy when you're coming from the state of awareness versus the state of lack. So like being in that state of relaxation is just another way to say like being in that state of detachment and receiving. Because at the end of the day, like when you're actually like here and you're aware like of your power, you're not going to be like impatient. You're going to understand like everything that you've been doing is at the end of the day like putting in some type of work, and it's paying off at some point. So it doesn't really matter. Like you're in that state of knowing. And then next is your beta, which is also alertness, concentration, and cognition. So beta is interesting because when I was thinking about beta and I was reading about it, a lot of things started to like make me like see how fear can kind of be like an experience of the beta type of thought frequency. So like, for example, alertness is great. Like being aware is great. And I feel like there's two types of like alertness. There's the one where you're aware, but then there's the one where you're in the state of fear. So like the state of fear is a completely different like understanding of what alertness is, which is like just being aware, like, okay, this is what's here, but like, it's not, nothing's happening. Whereas fear is fearing like, what if, like thinking of the what ifs, like focusing, even though it's not happening, you're focusing on the what ifs. So when you're in the beta state, I feel like that's something to really be like trying to focus on, like be aware, like where you're at, where your thoughts are once again like going, because at the end of the day, like it can really affect how you're building your karma throughout the rest of the day, like how you're going to react to something the next day, or that that week, it can literally change how your like destiny is going to like unfold. So being aware of when you're in the fear state and being aware of when you're in the awareness state. So then the last one is insight, which is, gamma, which is insight, peak focus, and expanded consciousness. So like insight is like that Christ consciousness, for example, that enlightened self consciousness, that unity consciousness, or that samadhi, like I was talking about earlier, which is that like like I said, the oneness. So when we understand like gamma is the highest frequency, this is what we're able to like receive downloads. So peak focus is something that's also experienced in gamma, because now we're like in that like flow state, which is also known as like the God state. So being able to just to receive and work with God. So peak focus is basically, like I would say, something that you don't have to really chase after. You don't have to work so hard for. It's just something that will flow right through you when you're open to receiving it. And another thing is too, is just being expansive and like when you're expansive, like being in that state of like openness of like, I can grow, like I'm here to elevate my mind. Like your consciousness is going to naturally align with those gamma frequencies that are coming down, because you're asking for it and you're going to receive it. So that's just something to keep in mind when we're like understanding like all these different like stages are like coming through. Like sometimes we'll be in the delta stage, in the rising, and like because we're waking up out of that sleep state and like being aware like, okay, this is the best time I can do my healing, because right now like I've just gotten out the sleep state. Now I can tell myself like all these positive affirmations. I can see like this is how I want to build my life. This is how I want to build my day. So yeah, those are just some things to be aware of. So the next thing too I want to talk about was like what really is consciousness, because sometimes I feel like people kind of take it as like an ego thing, and like they try to boast like their consciousness as like something to compete with other people with. And like I never like aligned with that, but yeah, let me just take this quick drink of water because there's definitely something in my throat. Okay, so consciousness is a noun, and basically a quality or state of being aware, especially of something within oneself. So like consciousness is basically, when we actually look at the etymology, simply just to know. And like when you know, I don't feel like there's a need to like boast that you know. Like you just are it, like you just be it. And that's just something that I've seen in the spiritual community, is like people like boasting about their spirituality, like being like so self-righteous within their path. And it's just like when you actually like take a second to look at where they're at, like they really don't know anything. Like, and I see this a lot in like religion, but like yeah, like it's not something to be like prideful of. I feel like it's just how you carry yourself naturally. You don't need to like announce it. You just be it. So that's just something that I really want to talk about, because I be seeing a lot of that. And like in this path, I feel like something that I've like kept in mind was just being like in a state of humbleness, not in like the state where like I feel less than anybody else, but like respectful to everybody and where they're at on their journey. Because like at the end of the day, we're all trying. Like we're all trying our best, and like not everybody is going to have the same information that we have, because some people just don't choose to ask questions, and that's okay. Like that's their choice. But there's no need to like show off like, oh, you know this, and like this could help them, if they're not really asking for it. Because that's something that I used to go through a lot, where I would try to like, I could read a person, I could be like, oh, this is exactly what they needed, and I knew this is what they needed, but did they ask me, was the real question, and they never would. So when I would just like put in my 2 cents and they weren't ready for that information, it wouldn't like get the same effect of what I intended it for, if that makes sense. So I just feel like being aware of what consciousness is, it's just a state of knowing. There's just really no need to like build the ego off of that. But basically these are the portals of the body, which is also known as the chakras. And like we were talking about earlier, the solar plexus. So the solar plexus is something that's really important because this is what really drives our like everyday life, like our power to literally create anything in life. So when we understand that, like, it's a beautiful thing to harness it, but the next step is going through that heart chakra, because like it's great that we want the power, but at the end of the day, if we're not acting with our heart chakra, we can literally like hurt other people just for the things that we want. Like, and it's not intentional sometimes. Like it could just be like, oh, I want this type of like money, for example. I want this type of car. I want this type of relationship. And it's like, for example, with an ex, I've seen a lot in the spiritual community, like people trying to put spells on their exes for them to come back. And that's not okay. Like, trust me, it is not okay, because you're messing with their free will. At the end of the day, you're messing with their like actual sovereignty, which is like something that you wouldn't want done to you. So I would just suggest like staying away from like those types of things. And the best way to do that is working with your heart chakra. Like, and this goes for everything else too. Like, I always circle back to my heart chakra when I work with other chakras, because it's like the middle. And like how I look at it is like, I can work with my throat chakra, like, and be like really like communicative. But if I'm not keeping that heart chakra in mind, I could be speaking over somebody else. And now I'm cutting them off and making them feel bad and making them feel like they don't know anything, because I'm not keeping in mind like my heart chakra, like, which is being able to be compassionate, being able to be empathetic, and being able to be like aware, you know what I mean? So like keeping those things in mind, like always circling back to the heart chakra, is something that's really important. And I had gotten this download like 2 weeks ago, but basically like the heart chakra is like the crossroads. Like I already talked about this like way before that. It's the crossroads like to the higher levels of consciousness, but like even deeper than like that, it's really like where our light body is. So our light body like really fills up our whole existence. But like I feel like personally, when I reflect on the heart chakra, like that's where the Merkaba is. And when we look at the Merkaba, that's where like the light body is held. So that's usually shown as like the Star of David, but it's like a triangle going up and a triangle going down. But really what that means is when your heart chakra is activated, you have the ability to use all of these powers of all these chakras with a righteous intent for the greater good of all. Like you're not abusing these powers, because these are all powers at the end of the day. Like being creative is a power, but if you're not using it with your heart chakra, it can be that creativity. For example, like I could say like the big tech companies, like their creativity is amazing. It gives us like a really great like way to connect with people. But at the end of the day, like there's other people in different countries being exploited for that. And I feel like that's just a lack of like the heart chakra being like acknowledged, you know what I mean? So that's just something that I really want to talk about, because power is great, but with power comes great responsibility. And we were talking about this earlier on our call, like it's a beautiful thing to have, but when you're not doing it without ego, if you're not trying to gain power without ego, you're going to be harming yourself and other people. And also, the moment you realize you are not present, you are present. That's just something that I wanted to like bring up, because sometimes I feel like people are harsh on themselves of like not being present and like catching themselves like getting caught up in things. But like at the end of the day, like it's the fact that you caught yourself, you know what I mean? Like it's the fact that you're aware, like in that moment, like, okay, even though I wasn't like 5 minutes ago for those 20 minutes, like it's okay. Because at the end of the day, like I caught myself. It's better like later than never, you know what I mean? So that was pretty much it. I went through it really quickly because it's kind of long and I didn't really want to take too much time. But yeah, if y'all have any questions, I'm gonna check the chat too. But
I had something I wanted to like say about, you know, how you were describing the alpha, beta, delta, and theta frequencies of the brain and whatnot. One thing I did want to mention is that we speak English, and our 26 letters that break down our entire grammatical text, is the alphabet is literally the alpha beta. So speaking English it's almost like we're at like a little bit of a disadvantage. Not that it's gonna stop you from, achieving, higher frequencies and whatnot. And obviously you do anyway when you sleep and, meditation and other things like that. But I just wanted to throw that out there about how, speaking English is like we use the alphabet literally. And I feel like this is why it might be a little bit easier for some other people like around the world to be more spiritually connected or, more intelligent just in general, because their texts aren't really as locked in as English, if that makes sense. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that. And also, people need to study the etymology of words. I'm very glad you brought that up because it's really powerful, and that's something I've actually studied before. And a lot of the things that we say are literally curses. And like another thing, writing in cursive, you know what I mean? It's like people don't pay attention to things. It's a bunch of little things, especially with this English language and, our school systems, how we're brought up and what we're taught. So you really do have to pay attention to stuff like that. So I was glad that you mentioned that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So like understanding the root of everything is really how you're going to be able to change something, like no matter what it is, you know what I mean? So like that's great that you brought up like the alphabet, alpha beta. And this is the thing, like word magic is always being played on us. Like that's why I said like programming, we can't literally escape it, especially if we're using English. Like we're in America, like this is just what mostly people speak. And understanding that it's just like certain words were tuned to a certain vibration for a reason. You know what I mean? Everything is created for a reason. But like I said, we have the power when we have the sacral, the solar plexus energy, like when we're in tune with that, like we have the power to transmute that, but it's just about being aware. But in terms of that, like he was saying, other languages, this is why they have higher levels of consciousness, for example, like the ability to tap into that because they use different frequencies when they speak. And something that's really important to like keep in mind is like, especially during meditation, is sometimes like when you're hearing certain frequencies, like high pitched frequencies, for example, just random frequencies in your ears, understand like those are actual like signs. Those are actual like things that are coming to you because you're now opening yourself up to the higher frequencies, which is the gamma, like I said. So being aware like of when you hear those things is something really important because it could be like a confirmation for something. And also light language is something that is like a higher frequency language, which is basically like when people are channeling certain like messages from higher frequencies of consciousness, and like they can't use English words to like describe something, but it's real. Like it really is real. Like all these things are real. For example, like the Dogon tribe.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just wanted to say one last thing too, because somebody had said in the chat, could you explain the cursive a little bit better, like writing in cursive? So like I said, the alphabet is the alpha beta frequency, and you have to study the etymology of your words. Etymology is like prefixes, suffixes, and where they actually come from and what like your language is based on. But spelling, for example, like you spell your words, spelling is literally exactly as it sounds. Spelling, you're casting a spell with the words you speak. And writing in cursive, you're writing cursive. So it's like if you look at, let's say, Japanese or Chinese, lettering and whatnot, you notice how like their letters aren't just like straight and boxy, they're all curvy and whatnot. It's like, yeah, it's like they flow. Well, it's the same thing with cursive. Cursive is like an English version of cursing, literally, but it's not always a bad thing either, because you can write your intentions in cursive and it'll help it come true faster, blah, 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 whatever. But point being, it's all in the calligraphy. Calligraphy is like pretty much writing, like if you look in some like the old European books and stuff like that, it's like they didn't even write the same way we did. It's in English, but it's almost like cursive, but not as much as what we learned in school. I forgot what the exact text name is, but pretty much just the entire concept of calligraphy and, having your letters flow and like whatnot, and also spelling, because you spell things out when you write it. So if you're spelling in cursive. You see what I mean? Yeah, that's pretty much that.
Add something too while we have it. What Nicolette just said. Like the God language, that's something that you typically can be. Well, I grew up like a Christian. I'm not necessarily Christian anymore, but I know like speaking in tongues falls more under Christianity. And that's something at my church. I went to an extremely spiritual church. It was, I would say, a lot looser on Christianity. But my pastor there, she was very prophetic and had a strong anointing in the God language. And that was something she prayed over me for, like very, very, very heavy. When she passed away, she said she was basically trying to give me her energy in a sense, or like her light. And I've had the ability to speak in tongues before. It's not something you can like really call upon. It's something that's given to you and you just say it immediately. But when I have what I said, I have no idea what it was, but what I said, the other people around me, they felt what I meant. And it's like, it's something, if you ever want to tap into the God language, like really just try to work on yourself and work on your connection and ground yourself. But it's like, it's really beautiful when you can hear messages directly like that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like it's so real. I'm telling you, like when you actually experience it, that's the thing. Some people, I feel like they kind of, at least for me, I can speak for myself. Like when I started to experience these things, like seeing these things in real life, at first I was skeptical, but like when I actually started to submit to it and like just really trust like in the greater good of all, and like God just guiding me, like my higher self just guiding me to what's meant for me. And like I just realized like not all of these things are bad. And like I've heard like tongues being used in a negative reference, and like that's the thing, like it can be negative or it can be positive. And I feel like the positive aspect, like you can definitely tell like where the energy is at. Because like for me personally, I've experienced somebody who's spoken it like negatively in tongues. Like I could tell they had like some demons on them. But like at the end of the day, like everything is frequency, you know what I mean? So you're always channeling a thought, whether you realize it or not. Like those aren't really your own thoughts. Like that's just a frequency of thoughts that you're tuning into. So like when you're aware of that, like you can switch the channel that you're on. And like she said, like being in tune with that, like God, like some people hear it differently. So like how she hears it can be completely different, how like a different person can perceive that light language.
I want to say something about that too, now that you just said that. But about like people interpreting things differently. It's the same way with entities or like different things that can try to come contact you in your dreams and different things. They'll try to morph into something that is like more suitable for you. And the same thing with like the God language, for example, like there's duality. You can hear things from a negative entity. And that's why I just want to put that out there so people are mindful. Really trust your intuition. And just be mindful, like I said.
Well, one last thing about how she said it's really about what you're tuning into. People, this lady is spitting facts and y'all need to listen. You have dipple antennas in your head. Literally, your hair is an antenna. The more hair follicles you have, the more you can tap in. Now, I'm not saying if you're bald, you can't tap in. You can tap in too. But point being, that's why like people, you know, in other cultures, like for example, the Rasta culture and whatnot, you know, they grow their dreadlocks, and just in African culture in general, because having that long, thick is literally like a strong antenna on your head, and that's how you connect, literally. So point being, like how she was saying, it's really about what you're tuning into. Your head is literally an antenna. So wherever you're at, there's always frequencies all around you for you to tap into. It's really about what you go and tune your channel into.
And since you said that too, when you go certain places, you know, like if you go to the hospital or like somewhere where people are sick, or you know it's extremely low vibrational, cover your hair up. Protect yourself.
Especially when you're getting in tune more like with feeling energy. That's something that is really great to start off with. Even doing like spiritual baths, like I recommend 10 out of 10, like clean your energy constantly, because when you're in that phase of like practicing feeling energy, you're going to pick up certain things sometimes if you're not aware like of how it's really affecting you. You know what I mean? Especially if you're like stepping out of certain like things that you were like kind of like closing doors on, for example, because this is something that I used to go through. And what I realized is like before, like I spoke about earlier, like just doing service, which is also known as bhakti in like the Hindu like Sanskrit language. Bhakti is service or devotion, taking action. So doing that thing, like the external disciplines and internal disciplines, like those things that you know are going to keep your mind straight and focus on what you truly like align with, you know what I mean? Like keeping your foundation like strong, because at the end of the day, like energy is so real, and like when you actually are in tune with it, you can quite literally pick up other people's like karma and stuff like that. And how do you take spiritual baths? So for me personally, when I make spiritual baths, I work with herbs, and I also work with like certain like spiritual colognes, for example. So when we're doing things with intention, at the end of the day, like you can cleanse yourself in so many different ways. Like you can go to the beach and cleanse yourself. Like if you set that intention, like I'm going to the beach to cleanse my aura, that's what's going to happen, because like the ocean is naturally like a cleanser. But you can also make like a spiritual bath where you put herbs that you know like their purpose, and you set that like intention with a prayer, for example. You don't have to use a prayer, but like intention is also just enough. But it's all up to you how you want to go about it at the end of the day. Like you can use, and you can make an aura cleanser, like a spray, for example. Like I said, with the spiritual colognes, like that's one way like people do it. Like they use Florida water, which is like really, really popular, but it's just like it has flowers in it, and it has like orange peels, and it has a couple other things, and basically they're just like things that help with like cleansing your aura. But yeah, I feel like doing like the physical meditation is great, like affirmation, great. But now like also like other things like movement is also great. And then also like the cleansing, like physical cleansing. So yeah, I feel like that's also something that you can do to help with those things.
Oh,
And
can I? Oh, what's it called? When you was talking about like throughout the day when you pick up on energy, like definitely one thing that I trained myself over the past 2 years to say every time I shower, I literally say this: I prepare for the energy of my day to be cleansed for a fresh start. I claim my power and I release any energy or any negative energy. And then sometimes if I feel called to, I'll close my eyes and be like, I call back my energy. I call back my energy. And I visualize, like sometimes like it's crazy. Like I'll picture people in my head that it would seem like it was an innocent conversation or something happened and they probably took a piece of my energy type shit. Like I just close my eyes, whatever comes up throughout the day. But I do that every single time I shower.
Yeah, that's like that meditation. It's beautiful like that you do that, because like even when people take our energy, that's another thing too. Like that whole concept, like they only took our energy because we allowed them to. And that's just like something that like boundaries wise, we have to be aware of, especially when we're working with like things like our solar plexus. Like it's great that we want to like gain that power, but like being aware, like once you're in your like having that power, like if you're not purifying your mind, if you're not purifying like your soul, for example, like certain dark energies will be attracted to you, and like they can affect you if you don't like work on yourself in those aspects, you know what I mean? So like for me, I don't personally like now, like I choose not to believe in somebody being able to take my power anymore. And by doing that, I naturally just don't do things anymore. Like it's just like for me, like certain things just don't affect me anymore. So like we said earlier, like it's everything's a channel that you're tuning into. And like being in that Christ consciousness, like being in the samadhi, which is like the top one right here, which is pure bliss, constant complete harmony of self with universe. When you fully are embodying that, or even like sometimes embodying it, because like it takes practice, but like when you're embodying that, you are actually in the integration of like light and dark. Like there is no light and dark as separatism, everything is one. And when you're able to like understand that, certain things just do not affect you. Like, and what I mean by that is like this is a really great example of showing what like the integration of light and dark is. So we see the block chakra side, and then we see the open chakra side. Being aware of both is the state of bliss. Being aware that both exist and they are from the same source, and you have the choice of how they can affect you, how certain energies can come into your life, but you can transmute them into the positive, is what like the state of bliss is, or Christ consciousness is, you know what I mean? Like being aware of like your power and working with the divine energy of love. That is what really God is, like really is, Christ consciousness really is, your higher self consciousness is. Because at the end of the day, like I said, your heart chakra, that's where your soul is coming through. Like that's where your soul is guiding you. Here you have feelings. So you can either be loving or jealous, for example. When you're loving, you're not going to choose certain things out of like a lack. You're going to understand, okay, this is what you deserve because you have that state of love. But if you're jealous, for example, you're going to come out of a state of lack because you now feel like you don't have something. And now like you're looking at somebody like, why do they have it and I don't? So like there's a difference of action when we do things. And I feel like the heart chakra is just like the guidance for all of that. And that's really how we can get in tune with like the crown chakra completely, because that's what it is to be wise and clear, and also embodying universal love, having love for the darkness, because only in the darkness you could find your light. It is only in the example of the darkness you can know what not to do if that's not for you.
So I have a question. So like I feel like I'm good enough to start building, like in terms of not focusing so much on my root anymore and building up, right? So sometimes I get confused if I should like how often I should work with my heart while I'm trying to build my other lower chakras type shit. Like if that makes sense. So how would you, what's your opinion on that?
I actually want to, I don't mind, I hope y'all don't mind, but I want to cut into this real quick because I think that it's interesting that we're talking about channeling our energy up from our root and tapping into this Christ consciousness and stuff like that, and just kind of defending ourselves against other people's energies when we're learning to feel them. Just from like my personal experience on this journey, like when I really started to be aware of my own aura field and how it would get altered by other people, which kind of in its own gave me a natural reading of the people that were around me, I started to break out in hives with like little things. Like if somebody was lying, like my body would react to it, or I would start shaking, and I knew like they're not being honest with it. So I started to like I was talking about, burning candles and taking baths and doing little prayers while I take baths and stuff along those lines. And like in terms of the question you just asked with wait, can you repeat that one more? Repeat your question one more time. I want to make sure that I
Working with the root like lower chakras, but also keeping in mind the heart chakra. Like how do you integrate that?
Right. So kind of how I went with the approach, because ultimately when we're talking about the heart chakra, we're talking about becoming neutral, right? And not really having any judgment. So
it's literally in the middle of all chakras, you know,
yeah,
if you like
it's in the middle, it's in the middle of all chakras. So like the heart is, once you can have a pure heart and you unlock it completely, you have free transportation to the holy city of Mecca, which is Christ consciousness, right? So, or that Akashic records, or that light language, or those downloads, you start seeing stuff before they happen, and they start happening instantly the next day, the next 2 days, like verbatim how you seen it. Even down to where you'll start getting like past, present, future regressions. For example, when you were talking about you're taking a shower and you're asking for the negativity to be cleansed off of you, and then you see little pinpoint conversations where you can see like, although in that moment you thought it was an innocent conversation, you seen that there was actually some energy sent with there. So like, for example, if we're working with our root chakra also exists in our heart. You get what I'm saying? Because every chakra like flows into the next, right? So that energy is channeling up from the root, but then it's the root plus the sacral, then it's the sacral plus the solar plexus, then it's the solar plexus plus the heart. You get what I'm saying? So like every single individual chakra has their own little like heart quadrant, which is why like when we're trying to heal ourselves, we can't get so focused on I mean, I say we can, but just from my journey, I've realized that the more I focused on like unlocking my heart chakra as a whole, I stopped missing the individual lessons. You get what I'm saying? Because ultimately there's different sections of your heart chakra, right? So there's your heart chakra that's dealing with your sexual energy. There's your heart chakra that's dealing with your sacral energy. There's your heart chakra that's dealing with like your power, right? There's your heart chakra that's dealing with your throat. So what are you speaking towards people? Are you speaking with love?
There's your heart chakra that's dealing with your third eye, which is really like your perception on things. There's your heart chakra that's dealing with your crown chakra, which is also like your level of understanding of everything around you in the present moment. So
You know what I would say too
I would
to
say
that?
work on
Like,
those things simultaneously. So like if you're working
yeah,
on your root, focus on how that root is carrying into your heart chakra as well. You get what I'm saying? Like what specific aspect are you working on? Because your heart is your key. You get what I'm saying? That's what's going to get you to fully channel that energy through you like on a consistent basis. I think that's more so what we're talking about, because like what I've noticed just from this conversation, all of us have spoken on us experiencing like spurts of getting those messages, but ultimately we're talking about and being in that state on a consistent basis. And in order for us to do that, we have to deal with that push and pull between whatever chakra we're working on from a foundational standpoint and our heart, because we got to check it with our heart. I kind of call it a heart like the candy store in a sense. Like that's really where you begin to build like yourself. You get what I'm saying? Not from an ego standpoint, but from an understanding standpoint where you're now emitting love to it in a sense.
so I would say that like key part that you used about the heart chakra, like all of the open sides of the portals of the body right here, like your heart chakra is the key to opening all of those blocked chakras. I'm telling you, literally, that energy of love is how you transmute all of your blocked energies of each chakra into the opposition of the open side. So when we come from fear, we're coming from that lack of understanding. That's coming from the lack of understanding your power and your sovereignty, and just like how nobody else can truly affect you unless you agree to it. And when we understand like universal laws, like, and we actually apply that, like, there's nothing to be fearful of. Literally, there's no need to be fear of the what ifs. If you're not tuning into that channel, that's not going to come around you. It's as simple as that. Literally, if you're choosing lower vibrational like frequencies of thoughts, those things to be fearful are going to come into your reality, because at the end of the day, where you put your focus is what will manifest in reality. You know what I mean? So like being aware of that and now sending love to that, because it's like, yeah, I could be fearful of somebody robbing my house if I live in a bad area, right? But if I send love to that idea of fear and to say like, this does not serve me, and I no longer want to feel this way, and like I choose the opposite side of which is feeling safe. Now, for example, that is like one that's sending love, because you're sending forgiveness of like all the things that do not serve you and you're letting it go. And now you're choosing your power, which is like understanding like, okay, when you pray, that's what makes you feel safe. You're putting that positive affirmation around you. You're putting that protection energy around you. When you do affirmations, you're sending that protection, positive energy around you. When you're choosing higher frequencies of like understanding, higher frequencies of existence, that's naturally going to protect you. And like something too, like I never put something like power outside of myself, but I also understand like everything with intention will create the reality that like I'm looking for. So if I use a crystal to like use it as protection to absorb negative energy, it's going to work if I say it's going to work. So like just being aware of your power and like sending love to all the things that do not serve you, like is going to be the key to unlocking all those things.
I'm gonna take that with a personal experience I had. So what I realized was when I started to become more aware of not necessarily things that I didn't want to experience, but things that I was fearful of in the beginning of, well, not the beginning of my journey, but more so getting back on my journey, I should say. What I realized was there were people that maintained lower frequencies, but for whatever reason, anytime they spoke to me, they were maintaining their highest frequency possible. Right. And I realized that was merely just a reflection of the path that I was on. And I set the intention to everybody I came across, we were going to have the highest level conversation that we possibly could have in this present moment in time, regardless of where they're at consciously, regardless of how negative they might be. So like the story I'm gonna use is I was walking down the street. I was walking down the street one day, and there was this homeless guy that was drunk, and I'm not gonna lie, he was harassing a woman that was walking around. He was harassing a woman that was walking around because he was drunk. And when I walked past him, he stopped me, and I really didn't want to entertain anything he had to say. But then he started to talk about God, right? So this man just went from chasing women and harassing them to now having a conversation about God the second I walked past him. And he looked in my eyes and he's like, it's your eyes, it's your eyes. Like, he's like, make sure you wear glasses. Like people are gonna come around you just because your eyes, when they look in you, they can see that, like, that light. And I was like, okay. So I started doing research on that, right? And then I realized that's the same reason why little gnats and flies fly into our eyeballs, right? So they can see the different the light spectrums that are within our eyes, because our eyes are the gateways of our soul, right? So people, when they look in your eyes, they can see how pure your soul really is. This is why you can track any dysfunctions you might have in your body just by simply looking at this person's eyeballs. They're gonna tell you everything, right? So like it literally got to the point where I started walking around with glasses, because like everybody I was coming across, like they were asking me for something. They was trying to have a conversation with me. They was trying to ask me for advice. And I realized that's because I got to a state of point where my energy was very, very internally charged, where like everybody could kind of feel it, regardless if I was having a conversation to them or not. Like I could feel their I guess their attraction to it, in a sense. Not, and I want to make sure I say that out of like not an ego, because that's just kind of what happens once we really start to set that intention to align ourselves with our highest vibration. Like y'all was saying, there are going to be people that will just naturally start coming because you're really on that type of timing, and they can feel that, and that's what they want, regardless if they're on that path or not. Like they're attracted to that, regardless if they're there to add on to it, subtract from it, they're attracted to it. So us having that discernment and knowing when it's time to like go, knowing when it's time to sit there and entertain a conversation or anything along those lines is important, because like y'all was saying, we do like really unconsciously consent to things because we're not kind of doing our 1, 2, 3 real time within the conversation. You know what I'm saying? So
And I feel like a level of self-love, like expressing that is like includes like having boundaries. Like you can't love yourself and not have boundaries, because at the end of the day, like then everybody's gonna suck up that love. You know what I mean? Like that you just naturally give off. But like being able to like know when to cut off a conversation when it's just like, okay, like this is the time to go. Like that's a form of self-love. Like that's a like see, for example, that's working with your throat chakra, knowing when to speak and when not to speak, you know? Like being like, okay, I can speak, I can hold a conversation, but if this conversation is draining me, like my energy, like, because we're not talking about like things like that are really down my path, like positively adding to my future, to my life, and I don't want to like engage in that right now because I'm trying to build myself up. That self-love, that heart chakra is going to tell you, okay, we're done here, and walk away. And you don't even have to be rude about it, you know what I mean? Like just be like, okay, like you can close it off, like because your energy is just low right now, like, or you just don't want to share that right now. It's okay. Like it's just a form of self-love.
I want to add something to what both of you said, if that's okay. But about like looking in people's eyes, I feel like for me personally, that's something that I would say I can read people's energy really well through their eyes. And I found at times that like when I look in people's eyes, you can tell because people do a couple things. So like when I look in your eyes, it's like some people, if they have something that they're hiding, because usually I can see it immediately. And people, so like, I'm not even gonna use that reference, but usually people will look away and I can tell that they're hiding something, because even if I don't necessarily know the person, and sometimes they'll just come out and tell me for no reason, like for no reason, but they'll feel like almost like they're repenting to me in a sense, you know? And I feel like, as Nicolette said about getting up and walking away, a lot of times when I'm engaging eye contact with somebody, if it's one of my friends, a family member, a random stranger, I usually can tell in somebody's eyes. It's almost like a slight shift. And it's like I can see it immediately. And I'll be like, I have to go. And I walk away just like that. And I don't, I try not to explain myself, because when you explain yourself, if it's something that's an attack for you, it can use whatever you said as a weakness. And if you like stumble on your words or anything like that, it can try to immediately get to you because you've shown a weakness, whatever the case may be. Because there are a lot of like strong energies that can possess themselves on people. So yeah, I just wanted to say that. And I also wanted to say how he mentioned about the glasses. A lot of times you can feel when you're around people if you shouldn't look in their eyes. Like some people, I will not make eye contact with them. And my boyfriend, he knows that. Like I just will not make eye contact with them at all because I can feel it. That like if I look at them for some reason, it's gonna be something. And every time I haven't listened to myself, it's like I can feel it. Like it really just attacks me in a sense. But go ahead.
Oh, I wanted to I wanted to interject a little bit on what Andre was saying about your chakras and not like focusing on one too much. I noticed that like on my own path that I've been walking, I did that a couple of times and I realized, well, what worked for me was, like he said, not focusing on one, but actively trying to work on all that you know of at a time. So to my understanding, there were 7, but I know like people say there's more and whatnot. But I just looked at like what each one of them represented and I tried to incorporate that into my day. You know what I mean? So instead of like if I know like, you know, for example, being selfish, which is something that I personally struggle with because of, you know, childhood experiences, I realized, okay, maybe I shouldn't be so selfish, but I couldn't just focus on not being selfish because then I'd find myself giving stuff away that I didn't really want to, or like, you know, that ended up hurting me later on. So then I, you know, like setting boundaries and just like working on what, like I said, each chakra represents and what your comprehension of it is.
That too. Just as Nicolette said earlier about the breath work and plugging one side of your nose and blowing out of that nostril to connect directly to that and strengthening that, you could connect it there, or you could also connect it to say doing like independent movement or independent weight exercises. Say I want to work my right quad, you know, for the X amount of weight, and then work my left quad for X amount of weight and doing it to the same balance. So that way it is balanced. I feel like it's the same with your chakras. You can't work one chakra too much because then you're going to be doing a disservice to yourself and strengthening one and really throwing yourself out of balance. So I would say, as he said, work on them all equally. And I think somebody had asked a question about that earlier too, about the lower chakras, but that's what I would say. I would say try to work on all of your chakras and not just focus on the one, because if you're truly strengthening all of them, they'll all come to the same balance as long as you're putting as much effort into them or equal effort into them.
Yeah, and
Can
that's how
I?
you really
I was
unlock
gonna
your
say,
kundalini.
yeah, I haven't talked because I was driving, but let me tell you guys this story because you guys will actually believe me. It is crazy. So I was literally channeling just my sacral chakra, and I had went to sleep and I was channeling it. I meditated, and that was the channel. And I ended up having all these like crazy dreams of like very low vibrational dreams. So I actually called Nico and I'm like telling her like, girl, like, I don't know how I can just like play. Like I want to work all the time. And I won't allow myself to be in my feminine energy to receive. And she's like, oh, like, she's like, give me advice. And then she starts channeling my energy. And I was at Jamba Juice when this happened. It was so funny, but like she starts channeling my energy. I literally start throwing up because when you channel the sacral chakra, it's kind of like a detox of this negative energy, really heavy. So it was so funny. I was like, girl, I gotta go. You like, I already know what this is. Like, you're channeling. So I end up like going, and I end up being literally forced to receive and be in my feminine energy. So I end up like having to like self-care, take a bath, like literally just go to sleep. So that was kind of like my karmic lesson of learning to, okay, like if you don't like stop and slow down, like the universe is going to make you like slow down. So I end up having to learn how to be my feminine energy. So long story short, I was channeling my second chakra, the sacral chakra. And I end up having to start over and like drop everything I was doing and start channeling my root chakra because my root chakra is so weak, and it just was smaller than my sacral chakra, so it's out of balance. And I end up channeling my root, my sacral, my solar plexus, and working my way up to the heart. And I end up opening my full channel of chakras. So now that they're all strong and even, I can channel any chakra and focus on that chakra. But you guys are talking about what order you should go in. And I think that you should drop everything and focus on your root. If you don't have security, you can't even hold up any of the other chakras. So I would say open a full channel, like how Nico's saying Kundalini, open that channel up, and then start
working on your solar plexus because now you're strong, or and then start working on your heart chakra, so that's kind of my advice. Especially with the kundalini, you gotta be like a strong what is it, the two snakes? So yes, that's all I'd say.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, especially when you build that foundation, like something like this is why like the yamas and niyamas are so important. Like, because you gotta have those social ethics and then those personal practices. Like, that's your foundation. Like being able to be a good person, like a higher elevated conscious being. Like, this is what the foundation really is. And like I said earlier, like they refer to sometimes like the 42 ideals of Ma'at. It's the same thing as this, basically. Like it's saying the same thing. It's just like their perspective, a different perspective. But like the best thing to keep in mind is like at the end of the day, like starting from the root up, like you're building that foundation. You want to be secured in your foundation. You want to be rooted. You want to be grounded. So then when you're in the higher frequencies, like you're not all over the place just receiving whatever. Because like we said, like literally, like people can like speak light language or speak tongues, but like it could be in the polarity of positive or the polarity of negativity. And like sometimes like people are open to those negative entities like in that state because they haven't grounded themselves. They haven't created that foundation of who they are and what they like, what their purpose is. And like when you're in that gray space and just not grounded, you're opening yourself up to like certain things that you don't want when you're working with these energies. So just being aware of that.
So I want to piggyback off of both of the things that you guys were saying and kind of tie it to the last conscious conversation we had when we were talking about that 80-20 relationship and stuff along those lines in regards to ourselves and relative to our partners and stuff along those lines. So like I was saying, how when we're not conscious, we will do things a lot in one aspect. And then once we bring awareness to this is not the route we're supposed to be going, we kind of start to overcompensate with the other one and get and build a 80-20 relationship, because we can't stop the motion in this area, but we do need to balance it out. So we have to put more energy into these other focal points. And what I want to say to that is, like, I came across an individual last summer and he kept saying to me how like he opened his vessel to receive messages of light, and he put pretty much a force field around his light being coming out around his light beam coming out of his crown chakra. And I was sitting there and I was watching him, and at that time I was really working on seeing auras and stuff like that, and I started to see like a gold and white light come around him. Like most of y'all probably never seen Dragon Ball Z, but when they turn into this form called Super Saiyan, there's like a gold aura that gets around those individuals, right? So now when I seen that and he told me that I had the ability to do the same thing, that I was already actually doing it, that's when I started to kind of bring awareness to it. So I started to set an intention of, I'm going to open myself up to receive messages from the universe, but only beings of light will come and deliver those messages. So I will not be inhabited by any lower frequencies or any dark entities in any way, shape, or form. Obviously, that was at that time I had a perception of there being dark entities in a sense, when that's not exactly what it is. It's more so just picking up on people's energy, you know what I mean? And their lower
Those dark entities are just reflections of you.
Yeah, exactly. So understanding that, like, I started to really create a barrier where I stopped believing in things that can harm my vessel, a lot like what Nicolette was saying. And like everybody would ask me like, oh, so you mean to tell me if I came to you with a gun right now, I wouldn't be able to shoot you? I'm like, you wouldn't even do that. You're asking a hypothetical question. You get what I'm saying? Like, you would never go and do that, which means that everything that I'm setting the intention to do is actually working, because you have no desire to go and do that in any way, shape, or form. Like, and they couldn't understand what I was really saying. But regardless to what if with that situation, it was really interesting, because as I started to do that, in order for me to maintain it, I had to stop having an opinion. I had to stop putting my opinion into things. And like, that's kind of why earlier, although I stated 3 of my strengths, I really didn't want to go and say that, because by me even identifying 3 of my strengths is creating an ego in itself. Regardless to whatever I'm identifying as myself, to say that I only have these 3 strengths and this is my self-identification, this is how I carry myself, that's kind of like, it's almost like counterintuitive in a sense. So I typically don't tell anybody that I have any strengths at all. I just simply am existing. You get what I'm saying?
That's what I was saying earlier with just
People
like
will,
just consciousness.
right. But what people will go and look at me and they see things that they would identify as more dominant than the other. That's just the light that they're pulling out of me. You get what I'm saying? So like I can't deliver more than what somebody's requesting. And this is when we start to deal with a lack of equality with that push and pull. So like they say, don't overextend your hand because you're going to get bit. What that means is once you find that light, once you find that love, once you find that state of neutrality, that state of bliss, that 12th dimension, you can give if you have more to give. If you have extra to give, then you can give it. You don't need it. So you're able to give it away, but don't give more than what you need, than what you'll need for yourself. So that's why I said in the comments, it's interesting on this concept of what is selfish, because I went through a phase where I wasn't talking to any of my family members in any way, shape, or form, because I just understood where they were at. And I knew that I had to destroy my old foundation, which was based upon the principles that they put in my head growing up from a child all the way to 18 years old. Right. And I knew that I had to build something completely different. So in order for me to do that, I had to go to a dark room and I stopped self-identifying as things. Right. So like when I left the military, obviously football ended with that too. So I literally, like Nicolette watched me go through a whole identity crisis. Like, although I was trading and all that different stuff, which is cool, I didn't have a self-identification because it's the fact that I'm even trying to self-identify in the first place that was causing that crisis anyways. You get what I'm saying? So that self-identification is more so trying to fit in with a group of people. But when you realize that there's no reason to self-identify, you'll fit in with everybody. So like I believe to a large degree, I maintain a frequency of kind of like a chameleon in a sense. I adapt to my environment really, really well. Right. Not saying that that's a strength, but by me being neutral, I'm more like water in a mirror than anything else. So I'm merely just going to reflect back to that whoever I'm talking to themselves. And because I chose a path of ascension, I'm going to maintain the highest frequency of that possible. So when I was saying earlier that what I identified as quote unquote one of my strengths with kind of identifying people's egos and things they might experience in their life, that's because I took the objective to be neutral and just be the observer. I have no emotional attachment to them in any way, shape, or form. And I became like water. So everything that they were saying, I was internalizing it and finding the root of it. Because when we were talking about with this alphabet and a language and stuff like that, when people are speaking, you can trace that vibration back to its source. You get what I'm saying? Where you can literally start to hear that light language in the form of a soul. So they might be saying, I love you, but you can feel something completely different. You start hearing different things. So like one thing that
You can hear the jealousy behind it or
right,
something.
you can hear the jealousy behind it. So like one thing that I realized, because I was reading this book called How to Read and See Aura, right? And it's very, very centered around discovering your own aura field, because once you discover your own aura field and what is it by itself before you add any other frequencies to that, you'll naturally understand any other frequency that's around you or has been around you in the past. So this will help you do past life regressions. This will help you do present lifetime, but past experiences. This will help you do present moment things and future things, because the present always leads to the future. So like when we really start to be aware and conscious of expanding and contracting our aura fields, and we gain control over that, we will see through everybody. And we will be able to maintain that mirror to where you'll know exactly what somebody's like projecting on. Because ultimately, anytime, like, for example, we're talking about our problems, most of us are speaking out of an aspect of projection rather than understanding. So like when people try to, matter of fact, I'm not going to say I don't know why they do that, but people love to talk to me about their problems, right? And not in a harsh way, but a lot of the times I don't care. You get what I'm saying? In the aspect of, because if I know that if I do care, that's like an emotional attachment to it, because now I feel obligated to go and fix them in a sense, but I'm always listening, if that makes sense. So like I'm listening, but I'm not getting attached to what they're saying. So, like when people would come to me with their problems and stuff like that, I used to try to give them advice and more so try to tell them what to do in that aspect. And like Nicolette was saying in the beginning of the call, that's taking away their free will. So one thing that I've been getting really, really heavily back on recently was making sure that I'm not like putting my prophetic thoughts on anybody in any way, shape, or form. So wording it in a fashion of where this is not something that y'all have to do, but y'all have the choice to do it. This is what helped me, so this can also help you too. And that still gives people that like free will aspect of it, because although we are tapping into divine entities and we can purify people, we can only purify the ones that seek purification in the first place. Because anytime you try to purify somebody against their will, that's when you start dealing with egos, right? So
Then you start picking up karmic energy for doing something that you weren't supposed to be messing with in the first place.
Exactly. You're doing work on somebody that you're not supposed to be doing work on because they didn't consent for you to do that in the first place. You're trying to change them against their will. So I started to pay more attention to people's actions rather than what they were requesting, because I realized people request a lot of different things, but they don't put the actions behind it. And the actions will determine whether or not I'm supposed to be there and expressing my wisdom in any way, shape, or form, in the form of like giving them real like guidance with how to use these tools. So there are some people,
and that's what it really is, to like be in the state of samadhi. Like what he's explaining is literally what it is to be in pure bliss, being in the state of harmony of self and with the universe. Because when you're in harmony with like who you are and you're maintaining your frequency, like you can come across low vibrational frequencies and that will not disrupt your peace, your love, peace, and happiness in your life. Like they're just not going to affect you and whatsoever, like especially like when you're like starting to shift over, like because in the beginning you're going to like have tests during that shift of like, is this really what you want? Do you want love, peace, and happiness? It's going to test you, like the universe is going to show you like what it is like to be tested with that energy. But like after that, once you get over those tests, like now you're in that state of understanding, like you're just embodying it all the time. And that's what it is. Like harmony is to understand, like that's really what yin and yang is. The light and the dark are one. Yes, there is polarity, but it's one. It comes from source. The devil, the demons, all that stuff, whatever you want to call it, comes from source. That's how, no matter how you shake the stick, it's coming from one energy source that is expanding and creating itself in so many different ways and diverse ways. And like we can't demonize, we can't like judge those beings when we're in the state of bliss, in the state of samadhi, in the state of Christ consciousness, in the state of higher self-consciousness, because you understand exactly why it's here. It's here to create growth. And that's just something to keep in mind too. Like if you're really like on a spiritual path, like what I've been reflecting on is like, why are people spiritual? And I've noticed a lot of it's to gain power. But like, why are you trying to gain power? Like these questions have to be asked, because it's like when you actually reflect on that, it's because you're trying to get closer to God, to source. The power source is coming from that source, and you're trying to tap into it. But also you have to tap into like the things that are going to create that, like I said earlier, like the samadhi and what he was explaining.
So I want to piggyback off of that, and I want to say that in the mathematics, it talks about how God created the devil to rule over the planet for 6,000 years, only to destroy the devil in one day to show and prove that God truly exists, right? And what's interesting about just that whole quote right there in that moment is the biggest breaking point in my spiritual journey was realizing that I wasn't being tested at all. I was creating my own tests because I was simply deciding not to get over this thing. So like the second you sit there and you realize that you no longer have judgment or an opinion towards something, you'll stop being tried in that aspect. It'll just disappear. Do you get what I'm saying? And that's when you'll really find what like your soul contract is, because in the beginning, I was too busy trying to pick and choose what I did and didn't want to experience. And I had a bunch of different biological reasons, historical reasons, ancestral reasons to why I was supposed to be doing these things. And ultimately, all those are rooted in ego. All those are rooted in some form of power, but that power is more so out of pain. So like I realized people seek power out of pain. And a lot of the shows that we watched growing up was rooted in that. So like, I don't know if anybody actually paid it. Well, I know pretty much everybody in here has watched Avatar: The Last Airbender. But when you really sit there and look at Fire Lord Ozai, a majority of the power that he sought was because of the pain that he experienced from his father in the first place. You get what I'm saying? Which is why he desired to control the whole world. And what's interesting about that is like, that's a majority of the people that we come across. They're spiritual because they seek the power, but it's not, I don't seek power on this journey. I seek to just simply be in alignment with source. I seek to, it's interesting for me to describe it, but I used to tell Nicolette, like, I just want a kaploof, right? And that right there is an interesting concept, because it's not that you want to like cease to exist. It's not innately what it is, but you want to step into a state of ascended mastery to where you can come and go as you please, right? And what that'll allow you to do is you won't have a limitation to having to be reborn and forget some of the information that you learned in your past lifetime. Like naturally, we're going to forget some things, right? So rather than going through that, I took the objective to just simply ascend consciously, so I won't have to be reborn again and now go through a whole different cycle of learning things and remembering certain things from my past life, right? So I felt like this was my lifetime to really start to step into my ascended mastery. And in order for me to really do that, I realized I just had to be neutral with every single situation. I can't have a bias. I can't have an opinion. I can't be judging somebody that's fat. I can't be judging somebody that eats pork. I can't be judging somebody that eats meat. Like, for me to even do that, that's me creating unnecessary devils that's going to cause a quote unquote test to come back down the line. You get
That's a lack of harmony. That's a lack of bliss, you
Exactly.
know? Like, because
So
at the end of
I
the
have
day,
a
what other
question for
people
you.
do don't affect you.
Sorry, my bad. I have a question for you, Andre, because I noticed that in my personal journey that I get a lot of lessons from the universe, and a lot of times I don't listen, but a lot of times I do. I feel like I listen when it's most important, kind of thing. So I want to know, what was the lesson that the universe sent you that really made you realize, okay, this is the time here and now for me to be doing what I'm doing as far as the ascended mastery?
Oh, I'm not gonna go too in depth because some of that's personal information. But what I will say is my relationship really showed me that lesson, to say the least. And my attachment and my perception in a lot of regards, and that individual, you know, my significant other's perception as well. Like that was kind of like the tipping point, because what it did was I had a very extended period of time of isolation. And in that isolation, I had to sift through not being around somebody I was around for pretty much 3 to 4 years consistently, like damn near every day, like all day. And that right there really took me down that journey of one, self-love, but I had to start doing certain things on my own. So although I loved to cook, like I had no choice but to go and cook, like I had no choice but to go and clean. So it was like everything was literally for that period of time, like just a reflection of my mind. And I understood that, okay, if the living room's messy, I can't go and blame somebody else for the fact that the living room's messy. You get what I'm saying? Like this all on you. It's just you right here, right now. You get what I'm saying? So what that did was, like Nicolette was saying, being aware of your surroundings and how that is a reflection of your mind. And if you're trying to keep this certain frequency within your mind, a certain level of mental clarity within your mind, you have to begin to really keep your space just clean all the time. So like, for an example, if I went and made distilled water with sulfur crystals in it and I prayed over it with and I burnt some herbs and had frequencies playing, the second I was done drinking that glass, I would go and wash it. I wouldn't even let it sit in the sink. I wouldn't sit down on the counter. I wouldn't even care to reuse it. Yes, I went through a lot of soap, but to the flip side to it, anybody that was coming into my space, they never seen, it's almost like I didn't exist in my own space. Like that's to the point where I had my space clean when I was really trying to refine my power and ascend consciously. And every time I left the crib, I left the TV on. I left frequencies on.
So I have another question for you real quick. I just want to interject. I'm not trying to cut you off, but it kind of sounds to me like, so like one of the lessons that you got from that the universe sent you pretty much was like almost accountability for yourself.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Like
Okay.
it's not that I can't depend on anybody else, but I can't expect anybody to do something for me if I'm not willing to do it for myself, to keep it simple. Right. So like I see a lot of men talking about different relationship practices and they feel entitled to it because they're melanated beings, right? But to the flip side to it, if you can't process the other half of that type of, or the opposite version of that practice being a reality and it also being sacred and it also being divine, and you can't truly reap the benefits to be fruitful and multiply like the Bible says, if that makes sense, right? So it's almost like I can't expect anybody to give me a certain level of respect or to do anything for me or do any favors for me if I'm not willing to do it for myself in the first place. So like I used to, in the beginning of my relationship, and we were young, and it was ultimately like a reflection of kind of what our parents taught us, but I always wanted to wake up to breakfast, for an example, right? And not that that's an actual requirement at this point in time, but that's the perception and reality I lived in at that period of time. And I would get bothered when that wasn't happening, right? But then I realized, I'm like, damn, if you don't even make breakfast for yourself, so how can you sit there and go and expect somebody else to make breakfast for you? You get what I'm saying? Like, or you don't make breakfast for that individual, so how could you expect that in return? So I simply just started to literally treat myself the way I knew I wanted to be treated. And one or two things were going to happen. Either my significant other was going to disappear out of my cipher and somebody who was maintaining that frequency was going to pop up, or they were going to align with that or send with me and also do those things. You get what I'm saying? So like what I've realized just in regards to relationships, because I feel like it's interesting. Me and Nicolette were talking about twin flames the other day, and we have done a lot of karmic work for each other. Like the second we met each other, like just past life regressions, like childhood traumas, like we identified it in each other. Like we would cry like constantly, like all the time, like just calling each other out. And one would go and look at that from the outside looking in and would say it was toxic. But what it did was, because we decided to grow from those things and because we decided to learn, it began to build cohesion, because me and her are so different, but like people on the outside will look at it as we're two and the same people, and that's not really what it is. We're just opposites. So like what I would say to that is, to kind of make a long story short, we have to treat, when we want to, what I've gathered, when I wanted to experience certain higher frequencies and stuff like that, I had to start treating myself that way first. And I also had to process that other individual receiving it as well, regardless of what the situation is. So I can't expect my significant other, for example, to want to share me in any way, shape, or form if I'm not willing to share them. I can't expect them to make me breakfast if I'm not willing to make breakfast for myself, and especially if I'm not willing to make breakfast for them. So like, I don't really believe in that whole gender role thing, because to me, that's like it's a
It's a
very,
grafted way of thinking.
it's a very third dimensional perception to me, because
It's like a limitation.
yes,
Yeah, because we
believe,
both have the Ida and the Pingala within us in our
yeah.
Kundalini. We both have masculine and feminine flowing through us. Like we can't deny that.
Yeah, so I don't believe in limitations. I've never been one to set limitations on myself, because like I used to have a very big chip on my shoulder, because anytime somebody said I couldn't do something, I would literally go and prove them wrong out of spite. Even though I didn't want shit to do with it, I would make sure I became good at it just to get them to shut the fuck up. Excuse my language, but like that's the energy that I felt back then. And what I realized was
Prove them wrong.
right. What I realized is I don't have any limitations. So once I stopped setting limits, I chose a path of growth. And I chose that path really in 5th grade. I said, it doesn't matter what it is. I'm just trying to grow. I'm just trying to grow. I didn't care. I'm just trying to grow. That's the only thing I'm here to do, is just grow. And in order for me to grow, I got to experience. I got to learn. I got to self-reflect. So this just became things that I did. Like I used to get put on punishment a lot, like a lot. Not for anything really serious, but like just little shit like washing the dishes, discipline things, right? And I used to get upset because I wanted to do shit on my time, which is cool, right? Excuse my language again, but I wanted to do stuff on my time, right? And what I realized was, in that just the phase that I was in my life, I was still within my father's universe, right? And that's the sun that is putting a light on the rest of the family, right? And this was, and really also my stepmother as well, she was also emitting a light because she has that masculine energy too. So I had to conform myself to a degree with their orbital field, right? And the frequency that they were maintaining. So I had limitations. And what I understood was I started to just seek to like looking forward to when I'm on my own, because I understood when I was on my own, now I can create things in my image. So once I did that, I started to just observe things that I did not want to go and duplicate. You get what I'm saying? So my dad.
And I feel like that's what it is to be on the path of like ascension, like ascended masters, like to grow, like that is what it is. Ascension, ascended masters. And like when you're choosing that, like everything that you're creating now is just in alignment with that. Like nothing, when you actually listen, because your body is naturally going to tell you like you need to change, you need to do something that like it's just not going to feel right when you keep getting in trouble, for example, or feeding into things that like are lowering your frequency. Like you're going to get tired of it. Some people quite literally live their entire life and they never get that like awakening switch to like change. Like it's literally a calling. So that's something too that I want to mention.
And what's interesting about this is like I told my dad this probably last year. I said honestly, he might have, because he had a perception of that he kind of recreated his childhood within myself, because he had physical altercations with his stepfather and stuff along those lines. And by the time I was a senior in high school, I got to the point where I literally had enough animosity to put my hands on my father, you know. And what was interesting about that, after I did it, I cried because I was trying to figure out, why did I put my hands on a person that brought me into this planet? One, but two, how did I even allow somebody to get me to that point of anger where I just blacked out, right? Because I didn't experience that for a long time, and I thought I got over those things. And what I told him was, I was very attentive to watch what he did and what was his reaction to what he did. This was relationships, this was business, this was friendships, this was thought patterns, habits, etc. Right? So like my dad would tell me to go and make my bed, but he wouldn't make his bed, but his life was out of order at that time, right? So I realized, okay, damn, I got to start making my bed. Do you get what I'm saying? Like I'm watching somebody that's not making their bed, and it's not the end result that I'm looking for. So like a lot of us believe that like we can go and do something that somebody else tried and it didn't work, and it will work for us because we're different, right? And ultimately we have to tap into the unity consciousness wisdom, if that makes sense, right? So there are simply just things that won't get you the end result that you're looking for. It doesn't matter how different you might be or how different you might think you are than this person. You are doing the same action. That action is going to have the same reaction. It doesn't matter what people you put in that situation. It's going to be the same exact end result. So for an example.
And I feel like that's what Neyamasa is talking about, like personal practices, like discipline. If you understand discipline is going to get you far. Inconsistency is going to have a reaction. Like you can't just like think you're going to be inconsistent just because you have natural talent. Like you're going to be better than everybody else. Somebody else who isn't as talented naturally is going to be working 3 times, 4 times, 5 times as hard as that person who thinks they're naturally talented and can just show up. And because they're disciplined, putting that work in and out and like have that dedication, they're going to beat that person with natural talent. Always. Like that's just how it is. That's just how it works. Like being disciplined is just something like, for example, like that you can't like escape from when it comes down to like personal practices and like being ascended.
So I'm gonna take that and I'm gonna say that we're all here to maximize our vessels. And this is gonna be the last thing I'm gonna say, because this is supposed to be a wise one on Wednesdays, not a, you know, I'm not really supposed to be butting in too much in my opinion, but we're all here to learn how to maximize our vessels. And what I've realized just from watching people, like there are people that have very powerful vessels, but their soul isn't strong enough to maximize the power that that vessel carries, right? If that makes sense. So like, I know that at some point, all of us, I came across an individual that might've been like 6'3", 6'4", could have been a great athlete. I'm gonna use a physical representation because they had the potential to, for example, be a great NBA player or a great NFL player, a soccer player, whatever it is. but they never actually maximize that potential. Potential is just stagnant energy. It's like it doesn't exist. It's almost like the ceiling, more so like you're paying attention to something ceiling, but it's useless if it's not tapped into. And to the flip side to it, you can have somebody that doesn't have as much potential, but they maximized their vessel. So now they have mastered it, and they will seem to do things more efficient than the individual that has more potential than them. You get what I'm saying? We see this all the time in sports. We see this in business. We see this in spirituality. You know, most importantly, where there are people that are biologically wise, they're not supposed, it doesn't seem like they're set up to experience certain things, right? And the example I'll use is a lot of people talk about the whole Caucasian and melanated thing, and they say how Caucasian beings can't tap into certain stuff. I never really transcribed to that reality, although I am aware of the difference in the biology. I've came across a lot of non-melanated individuals that have tapped into way more consciousness than 95% of the melanated beings I've ever came across. And what was interesting about it is the longer I got around them, they started having freckles pop up on their face. Freckles is melanin. Do you get what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, like the body is going to produce melanin as it ascends. It doesn't
And
matter.
adapt.
Yeah, and adapt. It doesn't matter what vessel you're in. What matters is, are you maximizing that vessel's potential, right? So although their ceiling might be lower than, for example, a person that was naturally just darkly melanated because it absorbs energy, whatever, all the biological things that people discuss, right? They're not tapping into it. Therefore, it's irrelevant to even have a conversation about it, right? So what I would say to that is, all of us here, we have consented to imprinting each other's thoughts onto each other. That's why we're all on this call, ultimately having a group open discussion. So like, I know that all of us are in, whether we're aware of it or not, we're all on the same path. And just by us choosing growth, we'll get to where we want to go. Growth, neutrality, being in that gray space as much as you possibly can, absorbing as much sunlight as you can. You know what I'm saying? I don't necessarily align with the whole prana food thing because you can alchemize your food, but being aware of what your body's telling you and where is that rooted from, you know what I'm saying? Is it a reflection of maybe us having parasites in our body? Because like I realized when I need to do like a parasite cleanse, I start desiring like pork a lot, but I'm not one to eat pork. You get what I'm saying? So it's like anytime I get that calling to start eating pork again, I know I need to do some type of parasite cleanse. In regards to just meat in general, I have my own sacred purposes behind it because I know that not all of my past lifetimes were, you know, just vegan or plant-based, I should say, you know, so just honoring my past experiences because, for example, by me eating meat, if I set that intention to honor that energy, I'm now bringing that power from my past lifetime to the present moment. So there's a prayer that I say every rising, you know, and it's talking about, I invoke the archangels, ascended masters, and Mother Gaia. And I ask that all transgressions I committed towards anyone or anything, past, present, or future, known or unknown, from all lifetimes be forgiven, and all my power be returned back to the present moment, as well as invoke the archangels, ascended masters, and Mother Gaia to forgive all transgressions that anyone or anything has committed towards my being, past, present, future, known or unknown, from all lifetimes. And I ask that all my power be returned back to the present moment. Aho, Amen, Namaste, Satnam, Swaha, which that Swaha is kind of like casting that frequency out into the ether, kind of like an abracadabra, or like a reveal yourself, like kind of making that happen, an instant reaction to where the ether is receiving it. So like that prayer is really, it's a repenting prayer. It's not necessarily asking for forgiveness to entities outside of yourself. It's asking you to really forgive yourself, if I would have to explain it that way, because there is a paradigm out there where everybody on this call is already an ascended master, which is why we're even able to have this type of conversation. There is a paradigm where somebody is a quote unquote archangel. You get what I'm saying? For everybody that's on this call right now in the present moment. So understanding that it's not praying to entities outside of yourself, but what it's doing is it's understanding that you're channeling the energy that exists within that and bringing it whole back to your personal existence right now in the present moment. And then
That's unity consciousness.
yeah. And then you're also doing the same thing with your past lifetimes, because our past lifetimes have karmic debts, just like our family can have karmic debts as well. So I'm clearing the debt of my past avatars along with my family as well. Yeah, past,
And
present.
that's what devotion is. Doing that day to day in, day out, like doing that work, putting in that intention, like, okay, this is how I clean my karma. Now I'm going to just allow it to be. Like, I'm going to be able to receive that because I put in that work, I put that energy out for me.
So yeah, that's the last thing I'm gonna say. I know it's a Wise Woman Wednesday, so if y'all wanna.
And also pranayama, like that breath control, like that what he was talking about, gaining control, like that's something that can really help you gain that power, because prana, outside of the yama part, prana is energy. And when you breathe in a certain way, you can actually pull that energy in to your vessel. So like when you cleanse your vessel, like when you cleanse your karmic energy, being able to pull in that prana from the universe, from the source in, is like something that's good to do as well.
Something that it's not even a question or anything, but it was something that I recall from my dream last night, of how like this girl, I went to school with her. I don't even speak to her no more, but she popped up and she was basically saying something about how like she likes to talk to low vibrational people because it's more practical. And that stood out to me. So that was something that I had to reflect, because then it's just like, okay, like this is all a reflection of me in a way. And this is coming from like a feminine. But it was just something that like, it makes sense though, because like, I mean, low vibrations is down to earth in a sense. So it's like, but I just want to say that, share that.
Also, it might be fueling her ego. Like she might, because if she can acknowledge that they're lower vibrations, like I feel like that's also like a form of feeding ego. Because like once you like this is a great quote. I feel like do the best you can until you know better, and then when you know better, do better. Like if you can recognize those are low vibrational beings, and right now you're trying to grow, like, because like I feel like everybody's trying to grow, everybody's trying to get their money up, everybody's trying to have better health, everybody's trying to have a better connection with God, everybody's trying to like just be more positive, receive love in some type of way. Like you're not going to feed into things that don't serve you, you know what I mean? Like there's really no need to do that when you know that.
I want to add to that too. I feel like, I'm not saying this is what it is, but potentially you might have had somebody reveal that to you in a dream because someone's close to you that you know you need to distance yourself from. I believe it was you that said earlier you were working on your chakras and things. So there may be someone that's pulling on your energy that's really close to you. So I would just say kind of keep your eyes open for that too.
Yeah, like I don't know if it's her, because we don't speak. I haven't spoken to her for like the past month or so. But like I noticed, let's say like if I was to drop a video, that's when she hits me up. I don't respond, but it's just like it's things like that. And she pops up in my dream state here and there.
Yeah, like
And that's the thing too. They have to reveal what they're doing to you in some type of form. Like if not, they're going to receive some karmic energy. So like this is why we get predictive programming. Like it's not that like these things like weren't happening, but it's more in the sense where like they're using our focus to like actually like consent to it and then create it. So like if they're telling you what they're doing, oftentimes it's like that's literally like they might not say like they're doing it to you, but they can be revealing that's what they're actually doing to you.
I'm gonna piggyback off of that. Now you can go ahead.
I wanted to say too that just as Nicolette just said, some people will do that. Like they'll go to especially lower vibrational people that'll be around you. Because I used to have people like this in my life, and I cleanse myself, things like that. But sometimes people will tell you things, as Nicolette was saying, so that your energy will be thinking about it. Like they're literally stealing your energy, and you'll see they'll go around and tell like 5 to 10 people, however many and it's subconscious, they don't even know they're doing it, but however many people they need to be in alignment and with the thoughts to make this thing happen. And then it'll just kind of happen to them without them putting any effort into it. But it's because other people were subconsciously working and sending their energy towards them for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna piggyback off of that, and I'm gonna say that dream jumping is very, very real. In the aspect of there are individuals that are conscious and unconscious of jumping into people's dreams to deliver contracts and stuff along those lines. So like I've had a few of people come into my dreams and kind of reveal themselves to me. And I knew that in that dream, I had a choice to either consent to that or not. And there were times that I consented to certain things and they transpired. You get what I'm saying? So when I understood that, I was like, okay, anything that's going on when I'm asleep, because I was aware of the fact that I was asleep. Like anything that goes on in this dream state is still a contract that will exist physically as well. So it's important that we know the difference between like this is just a dream we're having and it's a divine message, or is somebody infiltrating our dream? You get what I'm saying? Is somebody trying to, imprint some thoughts while we're in a dream state? Because now we're not projecting frequencies, we're putting our frequencies internally. So like this is why they say, for an example, the best time to go and hear your thoughts is early in the rising, because everybody else is asleep. And when we're asleep, our magnetic polarity switches from pushing outwards to going internally. And this is why we have a dream state inside where like you can feel, for an example, like I've had dreams of like when I was younger, like people punching me in the face and I would wake up and my tooth hurts. You get what I'm saying? So it's like I realized that those things are direct translations to each other. I'm actually experiencing those things in my dream. And that's what made me take it more serious when people would come and go, because I had to be aware of why they were coming and going. And was that my own doing, or was that something that they desired and it just so happened to come to me right now? You get what I'm saying? So
So I have like a interjection and an addition to what you were just saying. And what that is I kind of feel like people don't always have a full understanding of how energy works. Like I feel like people have the physical understanding of like, okay, there's energy in my body, but they don't really understand that there's energy in everything and that you connect to it. So like, to give an example, like I wanted to say this earlier when the girl was saying she was having a discussion with the girl she doesn't talk too much, and how she was saying she contacts like, or she talks to low vibrational people on purpose. And my girl had said like that's like an energy vampire. Even you having a conversation with someone through the phone, you're still engaging with that energy through a medium of a cell phone. But if you think about the cell phone runs off of energy too. The same electricity that powers your phone powers your body. Your spine is an electric highway. You know what I mean? That's what your nerves run off. And that's just on a physical sense. So you have to think about it on a metaphysical sense too. There's energy in everything. So how she was saying earlier, Andre, you had said something about like someone giving energy towards something. And I want to make like an example that people don't always think of, but I know you watch Dragon Ball Z, so you'll understand this. When Goku needed the power to do the spirit bomb, what did he do? He called upon the energy of the people, and you literally see blue beams of energy going from the people into Goku and making him stronger. So you really have to look at what you engaging with, not only on a physical sense, but because I mean, like in direct person, but also all around you, the thoughts and everything, because people don't always understand that energy is not just physical. So yeah, that's all I have to say.
Literally, all brain waves are levels of consciousness, and consciousness is what makes something your reality. So we can't escape reality. There is no fake reality. There's invisible things to the naked eye if we're not tapped into that. Like if we're not aware of those things and we haven't opened our vessels up to like see those things and perceive those things. But every state of awareness is reality. And so like sleeping, that's a form of reality. It's just a slower brainwave. And this is like when like Dre was saying earlier, like when our thoughts are internal, because like the body is working on that self-repairing, that healing. And like once you get out of that state, like reflecting on your dreams is something that's really important, because like all of those messages are telling you where your mind is at, like something that you might have not worked on, or something that you have been working on that you still need to do, and like, or something that has just like been really good lately for you. Like it's gonna show you like exactly where you are at.
So then I mean, because I always take everything as it's a reflection of me. So it's like the fact that I even attract energy vampires in the first place is like what the fuck for me.
Well, it could be that you are being one, or even consenting to, like, you're allowing that to happen, because that's a lack of like self-love, for example, like a lack of boundaries. Because like at the end of the day, like when you're the light, sometimes you have to protect that, you know what I mean? Like sometimes you have to remove yourself from certain things. So like when you're switching, like that's another thing too, when you're in transition, like you're going to like feel that you need to change something, and like if you're holding on to people that are like from your past, that's something that can also like be affecting you as well. Because like if that person's from your past and they're not like a new person of like what you've been working on, like you attracted it since you've been working on those things, like you got to understand like they're telling you that for a reason, you know.
I want to add too, two things, and I believe it was Tiffany who said something about the dream. But in your dream, you mentioned that, like she said what she said to you, but you also mentioned that when you post a TikTok, she will text you. And I just want to say that it's like the reason people do things like that is because you're at an energetic high when you post something, like subconsciously, because you know you get reactions from it. So people are directly sending their energy to you because they're looking at you. So you're getting energy from so many different people. So she can probably feel that and she wants a piece. So she's going to text you and you saw it. And since I'm not saying you have to set a boundary or anything like that, but if you did set a boundary with something like that, that would be how you could, you know, block off like somebody directly sucking their energy from you. And the other thing I wanted to say too, it's not a bad thing that that happened. It's actually a really good thing, because what it's showing you, as I mentioned, I think it was last week, but the song, This Little Light of Mine, I'm gonna let it shine. You are a light. So moths, they want to cover the light when it's dark. And you're a light shining. So essentially things are gonna try to cover your light and directly feed from your light. But it's your job to go outside and, you know, remove the moths or whatever the case may be. But it's like, if you really want your light to shine to its fullest extent and to be able to heal so many people, you really have to cleanse yourself of different people like that. And I really think that maybe that dream was trying to like put that in front of you to an extent.
I want to piggyback off of something that Tiffany said in regards to that reflection, right? So I can speak from my personal experience. I went through a phase where I thought that everything was a direct correlation to me right now in the present moment, right? And what was interesting about it was, as I got further along, I realized, because there were still people that were coming across me that were negative, that were maintaining frequencies that I didn't align with, and I had no emotion towards them, but they were still popping up within my cipher. So I understood it wasn't a reflection of me right now in that present moment. It was a reflection of my past self. So I literally started to like see myself in them, and I understood where they were at. And when I sent love to them in that situation, in those encounters, it stopped occurring, right? So like, I want to say this to everybody on the call. Like when we deal with that law of reflection and how we're attracting things that we are maintaining right now in the present moment, I personally didn't align with that fully, because I understood that there are just certain things that I don't align with, but it was still popping up. But it was popping up because it was showing me what I used to experience. And now I had the time to heal another version of myself. You get what I'm saying? So it's like understanding that, for example, if I'm talking to somebody, like, let's just say I'm talking to Derek. By me talking to Derek, I'm talking to myself, right? But just because I'm talking to another version of myself, and let's just say Derek was super happy, that might not mean that I'm super happy right now in the present moment. I can still be neutral. So it's not always a direct reflection of who you are. It could be a reflection of a frequency you have maintained at some period of time where you haven't closed that door yet, or either or open that door. And this is now a new opportunity to open it and or close it. You know what I'm saying? So just being aware of when something's a reflection of the past or something's a reflection of your future self, because this is what you envision. So like me and Nicolette both experienced it, where we expressed to each other that we wanted to maintain certain frequencies, and then there were people that just popped up into our life that had exactly what we were talking about. So now we got to see it live in person. We was like, whoa, like, okay, so this shit, like, it's possible. So we literally started to work on it. And because we got to have a glimpse of it, because they rose us to their equality, now we began to maintain that ourselves. So this is kind of like sharing that light, right? So it's not that there's anything wrong with giving people light, but what we're doing is we need to make sure that we're giving people light that will become generators themselves. You get what I'm saying? Like, so the objective is not to just give light to somebody that's going to take it, because that's an energy vampire, right? But by us doing our 1, 2, 3, our knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to this person and paying attention to their actions and their deeds, they will show us if they are asking for this light, that they're pulling this light out of you to now make it into their own. You get what I'm saying? So it's like,
And I feel like that's what, like, not speaking to them, like setting that boundary for yourself can like actually create a shift in some people, because like not everybody's going to internalize that and be like, oh, maybe I should just work on myself. Maybe I should just try to like figure something out. Like if this person's not talking to me, maybe it's like, or like if you even explain it to them, like, hey, I don't really want to talk about this anymore. Like that can be a form of love, like by just explaining what you're doing now. And like, if they can't align with it, like that's okay. Like you can move on from that, and that's also okay.
I'm going to say something else too. We don't owe anybody an explanation for why we are not talking to them. Like, I feel like a lot of us, we experience this, especially with family ties and friendships. We don't owe anybody an explanation in any way, shape, or form. There is no reason to feel guilty that you are, for example, not talking to your childhood best friend no more, or whatever it is. You are not obligated to be by their side every single step of the way. If they're simply just not on that path, they're not on that path right now. It's not that you go and close that door, because they might ascend and they might get back in alignment with what you're on. You know what I'm saying? But ultimately, if they don't, that's also okay. You just simply detach yourself from that relationship. Like you do that breaking cut. You know what I'm saying? And that will allow anything that's meant to transpire. You get what I'm saying? So like, we all submit to something, right? Which is interesting. And whether it's submitting to your significant other, regardless if you're a man or a woman, or submitting to God, or that source energy that we discuss about, like we all submit to something. And it's important that when we submit to those things, it's not giving up our power, but it's what's the right word to explain that? Like, by giving it respect, you are now equalizing it, if that makes sense. And you are now raising yourself to that frequency. And once you raise yourself to that frequency, everything will be a synchronicity. Do you get what I'm saying? Everything will play out exactly how it's supposed to play out. Like nothing will feel out of place. You get what I'm saying?
Even when things are in unalignment, like out of place, like that's still a synchronicity. It's just telling
Yeah.
you where you're what you're not doing, you know?
Yeah. So like, and that's another thing too. I forgot who I was talking to, but I was talking to somebody, and I pretty much just told them, technically speaking, none of us are ever out of alignment on a serious note, because us being out of alignment is just an awareness of that we should be doing something else. You get what I'm saying? But if you're not aware of the fact that you're supposed to be doing something else, then you're technically not out of alignment. You get what I'm saying? Whether or not you're in alignment with somebody else that you're near is a different conversation. But technically speaking, you're always in alignment with what you're supposed to be doing. So it's like, even when you're doing nothing, you're doing something, if that makes sense, right? And by us understanding that, I mean, this is something else that I was saying last time, when we find like our soul contract and our paths and stuff like that, like we'll stop, like we naturally won't want to pick, if that makes sense. Like
It's
it's not,
literally this quote, like, do the best you can, and then until you know better, then you will like do better. Like you will
yeah,
literally, it's not picking, it's no longer like, oh, I want to do this because it makes me feel this way. Like it's
yeah,
just a natural flow.
yeah, it's just now happening. You get what I'm saying?
And
So
that's what it is, like with the 8 limbs of yoga. Like I'm gonna refer to it like in this aspect, but in different religions and different cultures, they speak about the same thing, like having all of these external disciplines, internal disciplines, like concentration, all that stuff. Like that's breath control, all the other stuff. Like, you know, this is all what it, like it naturally will like gravitate towards you. Like you will naturally just feel like, oh, I need to start sitting better. Like, why do I sit this way? Like I don't like how this makes me feel. Like certain things are just naturally gonna flow.
I'm happy you just said that about sitting, because that brought me back to something I was thinking about earlier. I don't remember who said it, but about like how your body shape or like your body type, and not necessarily listening to what you should be doing based off of what your body is showing you. Like me, for example, growing up, I didn't really do sports or really do honestly that much physical activity, just to be honest. And I'm tall. I'm built to be athletic. And until I started tapping into that recently, I couldn't tap into other areas of my life because I wasn't balanced. I wasn't doing what I needed to be doing. Because your body is like, we're our spiritual selves, and our soul is in this body, but our soul is in this body. So I think that's just something I wanted to say, like, take care of your body, take care of yourself, and take care, like, it's so, so important, because once you really start working on yourself and your physical self as well, so many other things will come to you, because like your electrical charge, you'll be pumping more blood, just everything will be stronger and will be working better.
Exactly. That's that chi energy. So like we have 7 chakras, but there is more. Like there is so many more, but those are the main ones. Because think of it like a tree trunk, like this is the center. This is where like everything else is spurring from, like coming, radiating off of. So like when we actually look at our aura and how it manifests, like it's literally like a vortex just circling around us. And like that center, when those things are in alignment, like everything else will naturally flow. And the goal is to be in the flow state. So movement is something that is important. And naturally, when you start like waking up, you're just going to be like, dang, I need to go for a walk. Like, I just need to start moving. I need to like, just start like getting this energy, like going, like you're just going to get that call.
Also, I wanted to say something real quick, just to piggyback off what you just said about like, getting moving and all that. So for anyone, because basically I'm a super like literal person. So I'm gonna just relay this. I'm just pretty much making an example of what you said, but I also have something else to say. It's just like a car. For example, like if you don't drive your car every day, things get old, things rot out, and things don't work it properly anymore. You know what I mean? And it's the exact same thing with your body. If you're always in that stagnant energy and you're not doing anything, you're not really moving around, or like you're in a cycle of doing the exact same thing all the time, it's going to be the exact same thing with your body. Things are going to rot out, things aren't going to work properly, and it can manifest itself in like sicknesses, aches, things like that. So point being, like she was saying, get moving, things like that. But also, I just wanted to re-tap in on a point I had made earlier about your spine being an energetic highway. So literally how you were saying, you'll think to yourself, why, I need to sit up straight because I'm not sitting up straight. You have to think about it like we literally have poles on our body, and we have multiple places where energy comes in and energy goes out. But obviously one of the places that energy goes in and out of is your head. And so your spine goes directly up to your brain. And when you talk about the Kundalini energy, it rises from the base of your spine up to your head, and it's supposed to push open your pituitary gland or whatever. Point being, it's a lot easier to traverse that length in a straight line. A straight line is always going to be the fastest way to wherever you're trying to get. And it's the exact same thing with your spine. It will manifest so many other problems in your life, not only physically, but also like energetically. I won't say spiritually, but I'll say energetically, because you have a slouch, or
Your energy is blocked at that.
Exactly. It's just like a river flowing. And when you block off that highway, now there's traffic. You see what I mean? So
energetic disruptions.
And then, your chakras align across your body. So it's like if there's ever a clogging somewhere, you could be really trying. And this is one thing, like, I don't know if it's true or not, but I kind of feel like it might be. I'm tall too. I'm like 6'4". So, but I always had a slouch, like, you know what I mean? And my grandparents used to always say to me, pick your shoulders up. And, I never really paid it any attention. I'm just like, yeah, whatever. But then I realized, like, literally when I started picking my shoulders up, one thing I struggled with was like not only having empathy for others, but also just being confident in myself. And what I realized when I started picking my shoulders up and walking around and just having my head up, it might sound crazy, but it was like I almost developed like empathy for myself, and I wanted to be my best self. And then that helped me develop empathy for others. And I mean, it doesn't,
Yeah,
it
that's
didn't make
literally
sense to me, but that's how it worked.
But that's literally what asanas do. So this was something that I talked about on TikTok because like I peeped that like some people like were having negative effects of doing like the physical yoga, like I said, sun salutations and other stuff like that. But that's because they were like literally unlocking their like kundalini energy and like now everything was flowing. But they actually had to face like what initially had created those blockages. So like some people were taking it in the aspect of the victim mentality and that's why they had negative effects, but it's always positive when you see like the polarity of it, like, you know what I mean? So I think that's like something beautiful because it's real. Like once you switch your posture, like all of a sudden the energy is flowing differently and now you literally can like feel and see like exactly what it is that chakra was like creating in your life. And yeah.
Is anyone else or y'all still here?
Yeah, that's pretty much it for me, guys. If anybody has any other questions or anything to say, like type it in the chat or say something. But if not, we can, I think CJ's still on the call. We could pass it back to him.
Yeah, I'm still on. I had y'all in my ear while I was getting my night gym session, and I looked down for a second. I was like, it was all subconscious. I was having some conversation with somebody in here, like another guy pulled up on me, just chopped it up with me and everything. He trying to tap in with the community. So I'm like, all this stuff is just subconscious, vibes going on right now. It's really aligning. So, but y'all really killed today's call. I shouldn't even say that. Y'all really uplifted and put life in today's call. And I appreciate everybody for taking the time. Appreciate all the participants for even talking and just sharing as well, just sharing y'all truths. If you're all good, Nicolette, we could definitely go ahead and end the call.
Okay, I'm definitely great. If anybody has any questions, speak now or forever hold your peace. All right, I think
Yep,
we're looking good. All right, peace.
Peace, everybody. Make sure y'all take care of yourselves. See you at the top. The bottom's too crowded. If you're looking for us, find us at the beach or the bank. Stay welcome.